OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
It's 7:30 on Tuesday, the 23rd of March. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Ger and Eoin and Eoin with you all the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. We'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Of course, you can always leave a comment on the YouTube stream, and wherever else you're watching, we'd love to hear from you this morning. Plenty to talk about. A lot of Lions selections being made. A bit of crisis in the Serbian FA. Not quite with the Serbian team, unfortunately. A row has broken out between Michael O'Neill and the Ireland camp because, well, we've decided that we want to have a look at one of his players. And it turns out James McLean wants to come and play for us, so we'll see. He apparently trained last night when he hasn't actually trained for Stoke recently. So lots for us to get our teeth stuck into. Where do you want to start this morning, Eoin?
Wherever you like, Ger. I mean, one thing that kind of struck me over the last couple of days when we were having conversations about the weekend's rugby was Johnny Sexton. I know we spoke about him yesterday, but I don't know. Like, I mean, there's Lions teams in the paper. I haven't seen them. Is Johnny Sexton getting the nod in these Lions teams?
Getting a nod for a lot of them, yeah. Certainly Will Greenwood's team, he was starting. I'll find you a couple of the other ones now as well, if you want to talk amongst yourself there for a second.
So he's making the Lions teams. Is this something that we would have expected 2 games into this series, Six Nations? I'm not sure it is, to be honest. I mean, I think that what's happened over the last couple of weeks has put himself back into that conversation, and I just wanted to make the point this morning that the picture has just dramatically changed when it's come to Sexton.
It has. Why? What has turned things around?
So, I guess what we had after the first couple of games is after the first game, we had Pinky in the Brain from France coming out saying that this guy and his head is completely messed up, and Johnny Sexton comes out and is angered by the talk of his regular head injuries from France, says it's completely inaccurate, and it says often that talk of his injury is completely overplayed, and maybe at the time people took that with a pinch of salt. But what's actually happened is not only has he proved his fitness as the championship has gone on, he's kind of proven a level of bravery with his body. I mean, running into some pretty big tackles, taking the ball right to the line the way you would have expected of Johnny Sexton 3-4 years ago. Doing that multiple times at the weekend, for example, where it begs the question, when is the Sexton decline going to start happening? Because if you'd made the point 2 months ago that Sexton was not on the decline, probably would have been a bit of an outlier, whereas now it seems consensus that actually the question is how long can he keep at his peak for, and is there a realistic question that maybe he actually makes the next World Cup as a meaningful player in the team, maybe even a starting 10. It does seem like it's a long way away. We can't be making any predictions at this juncture, but it was just interesting listening to some of the reaction on American radio yesterday to the LeBron James injury, and how that conversation is completely framed around the fact that LeBron is not only an athletic freak, but mostly he is a mentality freak as well, and he will do whatever it takes to ensure that he gets back from injury pretty quickly. And he's obviously a year older than Sexton at the moment. He's 36 years of age, and whatever it will take to get him back from injury, he will do. His work ethic is completely off the charts. Something you can say about Sexton as well, that if there's one person who you assume will make recoveries from knocks or whatever's going to come from being 35, 36, 37 years of age over the next 3 years, it's probably him. And I just wonder now if actually the conversation has just changed dramatically when it comes to France 2023.
So France 2023 is October. It's going to be June, July, September, October 2023. It's like 26 to 30 months away. He just needs to stay at this level for another 30 months. And then we can happily send him over the hill to retire. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So that's the situation there. So, like, I mean, I'm sure everybody's been thinking it anyway. He was really good in the last couple of games anyway. So it's not breaking news this morning, but Johnny Sexton's gone nowhere.
What do you do? Do you play him? How often do you play him? Like 10 games a year between now and then, and then you just decide, or do you like how do you string that out to a point where it's realistic, or do you just keep using the games and say, well, you're going to have to play because the more you play, the fitter you get. The more fit you get, the better your form. There's a very delicate balancing act there, is there? Or do we just assume that modern science is improving to the point where strength and recovery and fitness and all that kind of stuff means that there's not going to be a significant physical diminution between now and then?
I think a couple of years ago you would have said that if you want to get Sexton to the next World Cup, you're probably going to need to him to take some sort of sabbatical at some stage in his career.
And lo and behold, along came COVID.
Yeah, and that's what I was just about to say. Like, I mean, I think he said it himself when he was on the show last year that this is maybe not a necessary break for him, but you could certainly twist this into a really positive thing. And like, you ally that to the player management system that the IRFU have implemented down through the years, and you give him a shot of making it to the next stage. Like, the comparison, though, if you're looking at, I guess, people who've taken sabbaticals, is Richie McCaw and Dan Carter. Now, I know McCaw plays in a more attritional position, but he would have got to the age of 35 only before he had to hang up the boots. I guess with Dan Carter, it's something similar as well, wasn't it? Even I think it was actually younger that he retired as an All Black. So
yeah, but Dan Carter was still playing pretty good stuff when he came to the Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah, sure, but like to expect a player to get 38 is still a big leap. But I don't know, if you're looking at Sexton now and somebody said to you he's 30 years of age, you'd be inclined to almost believe them. So, like, of course, this conversation comes from winning against England and winning against Scotland and him playing really well in both of those games. Maybe it's just that, but it's just a thought that crossed my mind. Is like, is it the most ridiculous thing in the world that the conversation has changed around the out half position?
I think that there's still more chance that Sexton doesn't start in the World Cup than that he does, just by virtue of the age profile. And I mean, this completely and utterly depends on the health of Carbery at this point. That, for me, that's what's going to decide this over the next couple of years. If Carbery gets to the level that we think he's capable of getting at, then he's going to be our best out half. But he's got a massive leap to get to the level where he's at, where Sexton is playing at the moment. And sorry, that's not to say that I expect Sexton to come off significantly. It's just that there will be natural wear and tear as you get to the age to next year and the year after. Like, this Lions tour is going to take a lot out of players, right? Traditionally, there's been a bit of a recovery required, particularly it's going to be South Africa, and maybe with less travel, and maybe if it's all in England, it'll actually be for that reason a slightly easier tour for them from a physical perspective. But I don't see how. I think that it'll still be giant South African forwards rumbling down the 10 channel in all those matches. Maybe the warm-up matches won't be as physically demanding, so it'll be really interesting to see what happens after that and how he recovers from that. But all of a sudden we're in a really good place where it was complete crisis for the second game of the tournament where he was unavailable, complete crisis, and all of a sudden it's like, actually, you know what, we're just about okay. If Joey Carbery can stay fit, then everything's going to be grand.
Like, it's going to be interesting. I think Carbery probably needs really high pressure minutes over the next few years, doesn't he? Like, even if Sexton, if there's any doubt that Sexton doesn't make it to the next World Cup, unfortunately, you're probably going to have to put Carbery into the white heat of a game where the scoreline is going to be on a tightrope, because that's one of that has been the greatness of Johnny Sexton, that if he's standing over a kick with the scores level, for example, and with the clock in the red, he's going to nail it. How do you learn how to nail that? Well, it's practice and actually being in that position, being in that high-pressured scenario. Whereas if you're a backup out half, those opportunities are going to be limited. And now he will get those chances for Munster, and once Thomond Park is back to being full on European nights, that pressure will be back straight away. But maybe in the Green of Ireland as well, there needs to be a few fast-tracked opportunities. Because we were very fortunate that Sexton was on the pitch for that Scotland kick, for example. We absolutely were, and that's one of the reasons that Will Greenwood's gone for him at number 10. It's funny, there's no Owen Farrell in a lot of these squads, but I can't see that happening. I can't see them not bringing Owen Farrell on the Lions. Can you see them doing that? The Rob Kitson squad, for example, has Bigger, Russell and Sexton. Oh, sorry, he squeezes Owen Farrell in under the centres. Sorry, my bad. But yeah, so maybe that's it. Maybe Owen Farrell is in under the centres, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 English players on Owen's slot at the Times. Mako Vinapola, Maro Itoje, Curry, Henry Slade and Anthony Watson are playing for the Lions. Tyke Furlong, Tyke Byrne, Johnny Sexton, Robbie Henshaw, the only Irishman on that team. And that's a starting team rather than a squad, obviously.
Yeah.
Right. Well, like, I mean, I think Irish people who are big fans of the Lions and love watching the tour every 4 years, if you'd been offered 4 starting Lions 3 weeks ago, you definitely would have taken it.
Yeah, I mean, at one point it looked like, is anybody going to make it? Especially after that first game, we're like, oh, I'm not sure about that. So, loads of comments coming in on YouTube. The media tried to retire Sexton early, it seems, says Michael. Kevin on YouTube says, Sexton a class act, lads, but odds are he won't make the World Cup. Joey Carberry, please help out. Backup 10 needs game time. For the last 2 Rugby World Cups, our backup 10s only had 5 or 6 starts, which is not enough. It's not ideal, but I mean, there are definitely scenarios in world rugby history where teams have done well with backups who are just playing well, and the lack of experience wasn't the single factor that prevented them from doing anything. How can we get further in the World Cup competition with an older Sexton? Maybe have him finish games instead of starting them. That's certainly an idea. I think that there's a very strong possibility that when the World Cup rolls around, there's going to be a significant debate about who starts and who finishes these games, in the same way that there was when Sexton and O'Gara went to the World Cup, when we had our best squad and our best chance and things didn't go well for us. Joey needs to be playing the Italy games against second-tier opposition, etc. To be fair, they would have been playing him, I'm sure, if he was fit, says Lorcan O'Reilly. That's the point. It was too early. You know, I'm not even sure that he's going to start this weekend. I don't know. I think it seems too early to be starting him this weekend. But having him off the bench would be a fairly significant fill-up for Munster if they need him. And then this one, Benny, the rugby expert on WhatsApp, 087 918 180 is the WhatsApp number. Lads, a good motivated Ireland with nothing to lose beat an unmotivated England with nothing to win. Do you think this game would have happened if there was anything on the line or in a World Cup year? Analyse all you want. But how can you make worthy analysis when nothing is on the line? I mean, nothing's on the line except the very job that the head coach has, to the point where they're now lining up replacements for him in all the papers this morning. His literal job was on the line, and Eddie Jones is feeling the heat. By the way, the Telegraph, I think it was, have 4 candidates. One is the Ireland coach, one is Mark McCall, one is Warren Gatland, and one is the Exeter coach. I'm like, that's interesting. Suddenly it's like Andy Farrell might not be the right man for the Ireland job, says some of the Irish media 2 weeks ago, and then England come and see him and are like, hey, he's ours. That'd be a bit ironic, wouldn't it?
Yeah, God, that's...
How do you like them Apple's xenophobic commenters?
I'm not... Is Eddie Jones really going to be replaced? Like, I still think, of course, there's substance to those stories. I just can't believe it. I just really can't believe it. I'd be tending to agree with Benny, the rugby expert on WhatsApp, to a point.
What?
Like, I mean,
there was nothing at stake for England.
No. To a point. I don't agree with that. I agree that maybe analysis of this game can come down to a little bit of there being nothing on the line. A little bit, not the entire thing. It's just it is something that's come into my mind because we've been stung in this way before while looking at this. It did seem that it does seem that if you play England earlier in the championship, there's obviously more on the line for them than there is if you play them late in the championship and they've got nothing to play for. I also think, and we heard this last week from people who know a hell of a lot better than I do, that there was no pressure on Eddie Jones last week. Now all of a sudden there is pressure on Eddie Jones. So do they start feeling that in retrospect within the England camp? Like, because if you're not feeling it beforehand, then I mean the performance is going to dip. So I don't know. I'm not sure what the truth is here about that English performance. But
why did they care so much the previous week against that brilliant French team to come back and win the game?
Yeah, true. Like, I'm not saying that England don't care. I'm just a little bit cautious of being like Ireland are a better rugby team than England now. That's just something I'm very cautious to say because I know better than most people how this thing.
Yes, go for it.
Blow up in faces.
Finally, you were 3 years early. You're absolutely right. Your time has come around. Even a stop clock. Now today's the day to be the stop clock, Owen. Come on, stick the knife in.
Ain't gonna happen. There is nothing, absolutely nothing in the world to gain. We had this conversation last week. You will only get reminded of what you said if you were wrong. There is no glory anymore to be had in our game.
No hot takes that actually you can reserve, reheated. 7:45 this morning here on OTB AM, live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Phil Egan is with us. We're going to talk to him right now. Phil, how are you? Good morning.
How are you doing? How are you getting on, sir?
What's going on?
Well, obviously the Ireland squad have touched down in Belgrade ahead of tomorrow's World Cup qualifier against Serbia. So you can probably see on the back pages this morning, Kieran Clark talking about Shane Duffy. Obviously, the general feeling is Kieran Clark is going to start, and you kind of think Stephen Kenny's probably going to go with Shane Duffy. And Clark was asked about Shane Duffy, who's obviously not in good form at the moment for Celtic, not even in the starting 11 for Celtic. So does Stephen Kenny put him in for the opening World Cup qualifier against Serbia, or does he look to the future and think, now Darragh O'Shea is the young up-and-coming player, suits probably the style of play I want more, where he's better on the ball, and that's going to be one of the big calls that Stephen Kenny has to make tomorrow night.
Well, let's tease that out a little bit, because it's a very difficult decision for any manager to make. Here's a player who's done okay for the country in the past and has done well, and who has responded in big occasions. And international football, particularly Irish international football, is littered with players who've been having an absolute stinker of a time at club level, who get back into the national environment. The management and their teammates put their arm around them and they produce a heroic one-off performance. And it's like, that's kind of the whole point of international football, this freedom from whatever's going on. The other thing is that there are players whose careers have just, for whatever reason, hit the skids, and the form is so bad you can't pick them.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Shane Duffy, he's in that category because he has had such a bad time. I know he's had an awful time off the pitch as well. His form for Celtic got to the stage where they just couldn't pick him anymore because his confidence was shot. Obviously, Celtic were not doing well either, so that just seemed to highlight just the dip in form that Duffy was having. And saying that, I would agree with what you say about sometimes just coming away in a different environment, being around the international teammates, and throughout all the struggles Stephen Kenny has had in 2020 with injuries and COVID and lack of goals, there's always a good spirit in the Irish camp. I know it seems cliched, it's a great camp, but this could be what Shane Duffy needs, to be back in among all these lads where it's like, I just needed to get out of Glasgow. Can't wait for this game in Belgrade. And do you know what? He also provides us with one of our few goal threats. Yeah.
Is the right thing to do, though, to put him into this game? Is get him into the squad, pick him later in this 3-game sequence, and give him confidence so that later on in the tournament you can have him. Because let's just tease out the possibilities here. One possibility is it goes great and he plays really well and we get a 0-0 draw and everybody's happy. Or he nicks a winner. It's 1-0. It's like absolutely sensational. Rebirth, and that's the headlines. Like, wow, I always knew I'm playing for my country. The most important thing now for me is to get a move away in the summer, and everybody's delighted for him. There is a scenario where we lose a couple of goals and he's responsible for both of them, and it's almost impossible then to see a recovery. So if you're the manager, do you think I need to think short term, because obviously my recent track record as manager is not great, but I also need to think medium term, where I need this player to be able to compete over the course of the next season and a half and be good for me. What's the trade-off?
This is it. I think it's a huge call. I think it's going to be when that Irish team is released tomorrow, and there's a few positions you'd be looking at. Obviously, we have a fair idea that Mark Travers is going to start in goal. I'd be very surprised if Seamus Coleman doesn't start right back. Enda Stevens will start left back. I think Kieran Clark is going to start. Then you start getting into the midfield area. We'll be wondering, will it be Josh Cullen? Will Jason Malumbi play? Again, I think back to last month, and myself, Nathan and Stephen picked our starting 11s. Those teams may as well be ripped up now because injuries have taken their toll on those starting 11s that we picked. But also, I can't remember Jeff Hendrick being in those teams, but there's a good chance he'll play, because even though he's out of the Newcastle team, he is an experienced international player. He actually scored in the 2-2 draw with Serbia in 2016. But Stephen Kenny can't just throw in a load of young lads. He does need experienced players, and I would maybe consider that's where the Shane Duffy decision might come into play as well, where he might think Shane Duffy is one of the leaders of this team.
Yeah. Look, we've got another 24 hours really to speculate about this, so we'll come back to it. The other big news in the back pages is that Danny Ings is a realistic candidate for Manchester City. How much credence do you give this story? If we were doing deal or no deal, what would you be saying?
I wouldn't give it that much. I don't know. I remember when Danny Ings started banging in goals for Southampton, a few Liverpool fans would have said to me, would you take Danny Ings back? But the reason Danny Ings didn't work at Liverpool was because he couldn't break into the front three. And when he was given his chance, I know he had just overcome a major injury at Liverpool. But when you are thrown into the likes of a Liverpool team or a Manchester City team, you have to deliver week in, week out, but you're not even getting games week in, week out. So you have to ask yourself, if you're Danny Ings, he's 28, does he want to sit on the bench and not play every week, but get to play with unbelievable players, get coached by Pep Guardiola, or does he want to play regular football and be the main man for whether it's Southampton or a different club?
I'd take the money and the Pep part of that and play like 25 games a year.
Yeah, well, do you know what? I'd rather, if I was Manchester City, I would rather have Danny Ings in the penalty area, the ball falls to him, than Gabriel Jesus.
And here's the thing, like Pep might just be buying him because he's going to be relatively cheap compared to some of the other big signings that you could make over the course of the summer. But he might be buying him because he feels like he needs somebody with that skill set to stop fannying about and kick the ball into the net.
Yeah, and look, when Danny Ings was in his best form for Southampton, he was absolutely lethal. And it's trying to get that into the Manchester City team. Is he going to be able to build up that rhythm of playing week in, week out, knowing that if you have an off game, which you can, that you'll get another chance? You don't always get that other chance at Manchester City. So sometimes the pressure is on. But then again, some people would argue, if you're playing for Manchester City, the amount of chances you're going to get, you're just going to be scoring goals for fun. Even if you're only playing every second week, you're going to get 3 or 4 great chances every game and you're going to score. So why not make the move? And as I said, look, I don't think Gabriel Jesus is an out-and-out striker the way the likes of Sergio Aguero or Danny Ings are. So maybe it is a good deal for City and for Danny Ings. Whether it's going to happen, I'm not sure.
Okay. What else is happening in the world today, Phil?
Okay, well, obviously we'll be talking about the Masters over the next couple of weeks, and this story that was kind of been doing the rounds, but I presume we'll get clarification from Rory McIlroy on it soon enough, given the fact that he's in action at the WGC Dell Technologies match play tomorrow when he faces Ian Poulter. But the story is that he's going to be working with Pete Cowan, and he has been working with Pete Cowan. Obviously, he was fairly dejected after missing the cut at the Players' Championship. He didn't sound too positive after the Arnold Palmer Invitational at Bay Hill either. But the talk is that he's consulted with Pete Cowan, the swing coach, and he's been working with him at his Florida base last week to try and get things right, because he's obviously outside the top 10, hasn't won a major in 7 years. The Masters is the one that he wants to complete the career Grand Slam. And we know, obviously, McIlroy, a 4-time major winner, has been with his coach, Michael Bannon, since he was 8. But he might be obviously using Cowan as well. Bannon hasn't been able to travel over as much due to COVID-19. But be interesting to hear what Rory McIlroy has to say on that. And so a story as well that you'll see when you go through the papers as well, the GAA clubs in the north of Ireland are going to get a head start on teams in the Republic of Ireland when it comes to a return to action, because the GAA's COVID advisory group have cleared the way for adult and underage teams to begin training from the 12th of April, after the Northern Ireland executive confirmed non-contact outdoor training could resume. We know the restrictions here mean it's likely that could be another well over a month before GAA teams return to action. That might not be the case, but it certainly looks like teams in the 6 counties will be back training long before we are. Connacht's Pro 14 campaign ended in defeat last night. Andy Friendside beaten 41-36 away to the Scarlets, but Connacht were already guaranteed second place. And one thing to look out for Connacht today is if Bundy Aki will be available to play in their Challenge Cup last 16 tie against Leicester. He's going to be finding out if he gets a ban for that red card that he picked up against England in the Six Nations on Saturday. Right,
Phil, good stuff. Thanks very much for that. That's Phil Egan with us this morning. More from Phil across the day, of course, on otbsports.com and on the OTB Sports app. We're live in association with Gillette every morning from 7:30 all the way through until 10. You can listen to us as a radio show. You just tell your Alexa or Google Home to play OTB SPORTS and away you go. Louise Galvin's going to join us now. We'll talk rugby, run you through the sports pages at 8:10. We've got Mike McCarthy and Big Dev together at last at 8:25, up close and personal. Neil Treacy talking to us at 8:40 with the latest sports news. Nadia Power is going to talk to us about a fairly sensational opening start to the year that she's had as one of our top athletes. Ireland versus Serbia preview at 9:10 with Nathan and Stephen, and more Six Nations talk from Keith Wood and Brian O'Driscoll at 9:30. We'd love to hear from you this morning. Use the hashtag OTBAM. Now, Louise Galvin is with us. Louise, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great.
We've already been talking about what the future is at out half for Ireland, and part of the conversation around that is like, what's the story with getting Joey Carbery in the team? Because we've always been obsessed with trying to get our best players in the team. Is there a way that Sexton and Carbery can play together? Would that change how we play? Or is it just about whoever is the best current 10? That's the future for us.
I think, well, look, we're not going to say no, they can't play on the same team, but at the moment, who would Joey Carbery, after that performance, whose position would he take? You could look at putting him into a centre position, but it's such an attritional role, particularly defensively, that with his injury record, I'm not sure it's the best option for him. You could look at him in a full back position. I've no doubt that he'd adapt well to that. But again, are you going to take Hugo Keenan's spot? So I'm not sure about pushing him in there. I think, look, Johnny is obviously the man in possession of the jersey at the moment, but we need to have a bit more depth because Johnny may not always be fit, and he may not always be there, even though at the moment it seems like he's never going to retire and he's never going to fully age. So I'm not sure. I think at the moment the backs that are there have more than earned their jersey. Let's work with what we have at the moment and the style of play that we played with. I know we talked a lot about having this kind of two-sided tens or two-sided attack, but actually what really impressed me, lads, at the weekend was we didn't necessarily need another specific playmaker in that role. It was the speed of the recycle. We often saw Keith Earls come in and play 10, and even Johnny at times go to 9 if we just wanted to speed up that recycle. That's exciting. That doesn't need a designated second playmaker. That just needs all players being comfortable, particularly in that back line, at stepping into first receiver, sometimes shifting Johnny out to that second receiver role and letting him take the ball to the line there and release the further backs out wide. So I think more working on that style of play rather than we need two playmakers, one setting up on the left of the midfield and one setting up on the right. I think let's keep working on that and that variety.
So was this a new game plan, Louise, for Saturday night?
We haven't seen it in a while. I think if we listen to the little bit of sound bites that we get from the players and from the staff, we have heard about the things like, we need to take more pressure off 10, we need to step up, take a bit of responsibility, we need to communicate better. So it has been there in the background that the players have been saying that they have wanted to maybe involve themselves a little bit more in the game from an earlier point in the phase play. So I think it just finally seemed to have clicked, and certainly that's what the soundbites coming out after the game have suggested as well, Owen.
This is kind of the definition of heads-up rugby. There was a lot of subtle digs about even the terminology around that. It was like, oh, for God's sake. But actually what it means is that when the centre arrives at a ruck, rather than protecting the ball and wasting 3 or 4 seconds while the scrum half gets up off his feet, runs around and then throws the ball, it's like Mundiaki gets there and passes the ball out because he's a professional rugby player, he's a proficient passer, and lo and behold, it keeps the tempo up and it stretches the opposition defence.
Yeah, I think like last week we spoke about England's power play and were we going to outmuscle them. I think Ireland were really smart. They outpaced them. So you can clearly see the tempo was huge. They just wanted to, every time they got a gain line, they're big defenders, big guys, they want to hit you, they want to come off the line. They need to get their line back again, they need to retreat. They're not made to retreat quickly. So if you're constantly making them retreat even half a metre or so, they can't get that line speed and come up and hit you as well. And I think as well, we use the tram lines well. We move the ball side to side. We still kick the ball, but we didn't just consistently kick it time and time again after 3 one-man carries into rucks and, you know, Conor Murray looking for 3 forwards to come in and protect him. And we all know it's coming. It was done with a lot more speed and urgency. It wasn't done all the time. And yeah, it was really enjoyable to watch. And, you know, again, there was that level of deception where we'd hit a pot of 3 forwards and they might, you know, forward 1 might play a tip-on pass, or forward 2 might play the tip-on pass to 3. He might play the pull-back pass out the back to often Johnny Sexton or whoever was in that position. And we might play to the tram line. And again, we mightn't have even necessarily made gain line or just about made it, but we're stretching that in the defence. We're making them work across the field or making them fill the field. It was a lot more difficult to defend. And then because our attack just kept their focus, kept their energy high, we saw some really wonderful tries. And variety within those tries as well. We still use our strengths, such as our line out, but obviously we're going to, you know, we're not going to come away from what we're really, really good at, and we're good at set piece.
I guess it boils down to being predictable or not. That England, it's all well and good having good line speed, but it's much easier to execute that, I'd imagine, if you know exactly what your opponent is going to do. And it seemed that England knew what Ireland were going to do up until the Saturday encounter.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose we just took away, I think, a little bit of their strength defensively, in that we just didn't let them set up to hit us. There was a lot of footwork on the line, just to try and get a little bit of a soft shoulder. So yeah, I think England they looked pretty shell-shocked and they never really fully recovered from it. But again, I think it was the pace, the speed of recycle. By that I mean the ruck recycle, and on top of that then there was an element of control. So sometimes when you up the tempo of a game and you're not used to playing at that tempo, it can become a little bit frenetic or frantic, but it didn't. There was still that element of, okay, we're going to take our points here. Or like I remember just before half time, we're playing well, and we gained the ball back again from a restart. And there's a minute left and we're just across the halfway line. And part of me was like, oh, let's just play, let's just see what happens. But no, let's just line out, maul, get to 40 minutes, kick the ball off. And that's that element of control. We've had a good half of rugby. What we don't need is to tarnish it and concede 3 or 5 or 7 points. So that kind of higher pace was mixed with a higher level of control as well, which is important.
That's the benefit of having Sexton, who's been around for 600 years.
600 years and 600 more. Yeah, it is. Look, you can imagine he, you know, particularly if you're on the wing, I can imagine someone like a Hugo Keenan's like, yeah, come on, let's play here. But having Sexton just go, listen, risk reward. We've put in a good shift. Let's restock. Let's get our energy levels. Let's recover.
Conversation starter now, because you know, we've been looking at the various bits of analysis that have been done here. Brian O'Driscoll talk about the quality of the defensive reads that he makes, and you do wonder if maybe this is his best position. And then it's like, well, everybody else has to work out who the best 12 is, and off you go and you have that fight. But like, is that oversimplistic? It's one game, obviously it's a small sample size, although he obviously has played there a lot in the past.
Yeah, he has. Look, Robbie, I think he's been our best back for the Six Nations, and himself and Ty Byrne have really just the consistency of their performance they've put in, you know, 8 out of 10 solidly, 9 out of 10 throughout. He's been excellent. And 13 is such a difficult place to defend. And again, last week I remember mentioning that we needed to make sure that we got off the line, particularly off England first phase, because they destroyed us in different occasions over the last few games and we weren't getting off the line. But it's so difficult. You're coming up, you've got wraparound plays. He did so well in keeping his shoulder square, his hip square, letting the short line come and then coming up and making the read. And I think, you know, choke tackling the likes of George Ford, it was huge, it was massive. And it's not an easy thing to do because they have front foot ball. Whether he is best at 13, I think there's a little bit of horses for courses. I mean, even in the run up to the World Cup, there was this question of who was our best centre partnership, and we always had someone out injured, so there was different mixtures. And I think it is a little bit like, if we're going to play a very attritional type game plan and we want that real bosh, then it's difficult to leave out a Bunty Aki. And he did well up until he's sending off. At the same time, Gary Ringrose, he's the Player of the Year of the 2020 campaign. That's voted for by the players, so that just shows the form and the esteem that he's held within the squad. He's also, you know, a super player, a bit more of maybe that a playmaker is more likely to link in with his back three than maybe a Bundy. And as well, we have to look, like, I know that the rules have changed, but Bundy's had 2 sendings off since 2019, and you know, it's all well and good. Peter O'Mahony gets absolutely destroyed in the media because we lose that game against Wales. We win, so we forget about Bundy a little bit. But at the same time, it was a red card by the letter of the law, and that's where we can't be taking those risks. And as I say, that's 2 in 2.5 seasons.
Is it worth trying Ringrose at 12?
Yeah, it could be done. Again, you know, if with that, you'd be looking at him more as a playmaker role, and rather than a bosh kind of up the middle sort of a 12. You know, and Gary at 13, it's worked pretty well as well over the years. I think just the games that that Gary hadn't been playing as well in was the first 2 games for the team in general that hadn't played as well. If Gary was fit and playing at the weekend, we could be saying, God, he's back to his best and he's going to be Player of the Year again in 2021. So I wouldn't be throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Okay, in terms of the back three, we obviously saw a little bit of chopping and changing. We were all very excited about what James Lowe could do for Ireland, and then obviously it hasn't quite worked out for him just at the start of his career yet. We've seen in Jacob Stockdale that we have somebody who is, when he's at his very best, one of the best, most lethal wingers in the world, but whose own form had come off a little bit. Is there room for a bolter here? Is Robert Balakoon potentially somebody who can actually focus on that one spot at the moment, or what is the best makeup of the back three at the moment?
Yeah, there's always room for bolters. Well, look, I think obviously Keith Earls reeled back the years of the weekend. And again, it's funny, like your role of your winger in Northern Hemisphere rugby, we talk a lot now, particularly about the defensive qualities. I think Keith Earls was the 2nd top most dominant tackles in the whole of the Six Nations, so beaten only by Tom Curry. That's huge for your winger, but it also shows, you know, he's chasing a lot of Gary Owens but again, a very difficult technique to nail your man dominantly and give us that opportunity for a poach, a turnover, and maybe a 30, 40 metre gain in territory. So I think we've Keith Earls cemented on the left wing, and Hugh O'Keenan certainly needs to continue at the back. Not particularly spectacular at the weekend compared to some of the heights he's reached, but so solid, and that's number one, what you want from your 15. And again, that take over Elliot Daly that led to Jack Conan's try was just absolutely superb. He had no right to win that ball. Again, the makeup of the right wing, like, it's nice that we don't have a completely settled, this is our 7 backs, and this is where we're you know, there's a complete second string. Jacob did pretty well at the weekend. I think he's definitely better off just focusing on the wing and not having to worry about whether he's going to have to step up into the full back and kind of learn the ropes as much there. I don't think James Lowe is gone. Like, he's gone back to Leinster now. He's got a Pro 14 final at the weekend. He's got European rugby coming up, and you know, he's going to thrive in that environment. And I've no doubt that we'll see him in an Irish rugby jersey again. Whether it'll be, you know, in the big games, I'm not 100% sure. He's going to have to work himself back into that position again. But yeah, there's always room for bolters. Unfortunately, I suppose for Balakoon, the way the Pro 14 is ending, but we do have Rainbow Cup coming up. You know, it's funny, again, in a Lions year, you can have people come out of nowhere. They've 2-3 caps and all of a sudden they're a line. And just likewise, you can finish the domestic season really strongly and get pulled into, you know, potentially a somewhere tour or whatever our next international rugby is for Ireland. And again, if we have a cohort gone off with the Lions, there's certainly an opportunity for a lot of domestic players there to get their shot. But it's brilliant to see that we're having these conversations of real legitimate options throughout the field, really.
What's your hunch, Louise, on who the second best tackler is on the wing like after Keith Earls?
Within the Irish squad?
Yeah, or like the names that could possibly be future Ireland squad members.
Well, I think Hugo Keenan's a fantastic tackler. I know he'd 1 or 2 missed at the weekend, but I think he's excellent tackler as well. Again, when we're talking about this defensive wing qualities, it's also the ability to get up and make a contest out of the game. I actually think it's where maybe Jordan Larmour, answering your question in a roundabout way, where he maybe drops off a little bit compared to a lot of the other players. I don't think he is as proficient in the air, both sides of the ball, attack and defence. Not that he's not good in the air, but I think some of the other options are deadlier. But look, I think it's a work on for all the wingers at the moment, because it is such a difficult. It's the timing and the reading. And I know Keith Earls himself, he gave away a poor penalty early on in SixNations. He said it was the most stupid penalty of his career, where he completely mistimes it. So you have to completely commit to try and win that ball back. But at that point that you're following the flight of the ball and you realise, okay, I'm not going to win here, you need to absolutely time that. As soon as that foot's down, you're nailing to the ground. And if they have more time, you need to make sure that they're not just going to step in around you. So it's a difficult skill, and I think it's a work on for everyone, including Keith Earls. But he's definitely our most proficient player at it.
Andrew Conway was on the show last year saying that the kick chase was something he put loads and loads of hours into, and it obviously came up trumps for him last year. Obviously, it's been a difficult 2021 for him, but is he someone that gets his chance now when all things are equal?
Yeah, and I think, again, he's the type of player, like, he's not getting week in, week out rugby at Munster, because he's probably there as backup, back three player, particularly earlier on in SixNations, when maybe Stockdale wasn't back and fully fit yet. So he's kind of fallen between two stools, where he's not making the match day 23, but he's too good to be released back necessarily to play in the Pro 14. So you'd really hope he's getting his chance in the next few games for Munster, because he's been absolutely thriving for them over the years. And it is a difficult one, because we're talking about bolters like Robert Ballycloone, and we haven't even mentioned Andrew Conway getting his chance. But listen, injury or a loss of form can change. You know, look at us talking from the first, second SixNations game to the fourth and fifth. It can change a lot, and, you know, things can change in a matter of weeks. So for Andrew, he just needs to keep doing what he has been doing well, and try and get those opportunities with Munster now to prove the type of player that he is, and prove to Andy Farr that he should be part of his plans.
For the longest time, Louise, we were kind of there are a few key players in the Ireland squad who are irreplaceable. Tadhg Furlong was one for a long time. The 9 and 10 were always there as well. And all of a sudden, Hugo Keenan is very close to that. It's like, well, we're grand at fullback so long as Hugo Keenan doesn't get injured.
Yeah, and again, it's probably a bit of a lack of depth. He certainly has that cool head about him. Again, his defensive reads, his tackling, his ability in the air, and then he does offer as well in attack. He's well able to put boot to ball. We saw the line he took against Italy, which I think was just absolutely unreal. It's up there one of our top 5 tries of SixNations. Yeah, so I think he's certainly nailed down his spot. But again, there is a little bit of concern about maybe who steps in there. We have plenty of wing options, but it's a different position. And we haven't had anyone else to really put their hand up and claim it, or even put him under a severe amount of pressure at the moment.
Louise, great to have you with us. Thanks a million.
Thanks, guys.
Louise Galvin there, giving us some thoughts on the SixNations. We'll have more rugby a little bit later on, between 9:30 and 10 with Keith Wood and Brian O'Driscoll. We'd love to hear from you, though. The hashtag is OTB AM. You, of course, can WhatsApp us on 0879 180 180. It's 13 minutes past 8 this morning. We're going to talk Ireland-Serbia with Nathan and Stephen Doyle. Later on this hour, we'll catch up with Irish star Nadia Power. We'll have the very latest episode of Gillette's Up Close and Personal. We're back after these with the top stories this Tuesday morning.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Saturday panel on OTB.
The thing that came out of that situation, something that I would like any young boy or girl that suffers from racism in the future thinks about, is that I will never be the victim of racism again, because I'm not the one with the problem. And for a lot of my growing years, I didn't see that. I thought I had the problem.
Don't miss the panel every Saturday afternoon on OTB Sports Radio. Tune in 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Auto Mower.
Auto mower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Auto Mower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, very good morning to you. If you've just joined us, you're welcome along to OTB AM. Best place to get us these days, of course, is the OTB Sports app, which you can download in the Play Store. And of course, we're also a full live radio station on your Alexa or your Google Home. Just say, Alexa, play OTB Sports Radio, and there you go. Let me run you through some of the front pages of the newspapers and what's on the homepage of otbsports.com. Brian O'Driscoll picking out 3 minutes, 3 moments that swung the Ireland-England game in our favour. One of those was, I think, what Louise was just talking about there, a brilliant tackle, a brilliant read, defensive read by Robbie Henshaw. Trio called up as FAI explain Odobiko withdrawal from the under-21 squad. Zebo edges closer to Racing exit after top 14 giants signed Fiku. And football's darkest secret shows the impact of the game's sexual abuse. This is the unfolding scandals in English football. I'm going to start unusually with the Telegraph this morning from picture. That man there in the picture is Bernie Eccleston. What age is Bernie Eccleston, Owen, without knowing this?
Like 157.
Close enough. He's 90.
Okay.
And that is his son, his new baby.
Oh wow. Okay. Or fair play to the man.
Really fair play?
That's yeah.
Okay, fair.
Congratulations from everybody at OTB AM, Bernie.
Yeah, all right. Players lift lid on misery in England camp. Oh man, I haven't read this yet. I'm really... Several players will admit that they had a bloody miserable? Are they starring out bloody miserable experience?
That's what I thought. I asked you that this morning. I was like, what are they actually censoring from us this morning, the Telegraph? Is there a curse word beginning with B that exists in the UK that we're not quite familiar with here in Ireland?
Blooming?
God, well, hold on. It's 16 minutes past 8. You can't be saying that on morning radio.
So they obviously have reviews. Everybody has reviews all the time, non-stop. It's a big industry. And the players were apparently very bored because they had to stay in their rooms the whole time. Ellis Genge last week referenced the horrible psychological toll, and sources indicated that opinion is widely shared among the squad. Although senior players like Itoje and Vinipola have already issued supportive statements of Jones, I mean, they should definitely be supporting him, given that they are continuing to get picked while playing a very low standard of rugby. So yeah, the players were unhappy with their lot because it was they were the only ones who, of course, had to obey by the COVID restrictions. Everybody else was just having the crack and having house parties in their various training bases. The Welsh, the Scottish, the Irish, the French, the Italians. They were like literally just it was a holiday camp in Guatemala for those guys. It's definitely England who only had to suffer that.
Well, like, I mean, do the English get their way maybe more often in day-to-day life than other countries do? Are English rugby players worse at being told what to do than other players? I don't know. I'm just asking the question. I
mean, maybe not. They've all come up through those military schools where somebody sits on the toilet seat to keep it warm for you. The back page of The Guardian. Who's left to pick up the pieces? England Rugby International Dan Scarborough takes legal action over his brain injury, and the row, the English cricket team not making friends around the world, and players get their say on Jones. England squad to be asked if the head coach should stay on. It's a funny else situation they have. The London Times, Coley attacks England over spirit of game. Deeney bid for the PFA board role. The PFA selection process seems to not have gone down particularly well. I want to very quickly just get the Examiner open here for you. Interesting couple of pieces on the front. Obviously, GAA club activity is resuming in Northern Ireland from the 12th of April. Bold play for Magical Summer. That's a fixtures and championship structures piece from Kieran Shannon. And McElroy set for major coaching change. We've spoken a little bit about this earlier on. Pete Cowan is going to join his backroom team at least for a little while. So John Fogarty's piece, and it's in all the papers about the club activity returning in the north. GAA club activity can resume in Northern Ireland from April the 12th after the association's COVID advisory committee gave the go-ahead. So there was a fear that perhaps the GAA COVID advisory committee would say, despite the fact that we're allowed to, we're not going to because we have an all-island policy on this, but actually they've done the right thing. And so groups of 15 for outdoor sport at adult and underage level can return next month in the 6 counties because they've been vaccinating. You might have been, remember all that time where we were like, oh, don't seal the borders because they're rampant. They're lousy with COVID up there. And it was like, now they're lousy with vaccines. So if you've got any way that you can scuttle over and get a jab, then go and get it. Clubs in the north required the recommendation from the GA's body for it to come into force. So that's their normal COVID advisory committee. The Irish Examiner, it says, understands that April the 12th is still being considered as the official inter-county return date should the government allow senior inter-county training to come back after Easter Monday. You have to say that's up in the air, right?
Yeah, well, like 100%. It definitely feels that not only is there a guarantee of people in the north being able to resume GA action come April 12th, there is a lack of a guarantee that people in the 26 counties will be able to return to GA action in May. I think they'd be doing well to actually have this staggered situation that's being advertised in some places this morning. Like I think that they would bite your hand off for a May bank holiday return to action. Most people in the Republic of Ireland. Yeah. The back page of the Herald. We're not afraid of any side. This is Josh Cullen, who seems pretty confident and seems to be getting on well at Anderlecht. GA clubs in the north set for a return to play next month. And can Travers rise to the occasion? Mark Travers is going to be in goals for the Republic of Ireland tomorrow night against Serbia. 6 counties headed head start in GA's COVID return. Is this the year that, the Antrim footballers take advantage? Tyrone are really the big winners here, aren't they? Yeah. Lowe can thrive again and return to familiar environment. That's James Lowe, who it's going to be interesting to see what kind of form he's in this weekend. I can't tell you how excited I am about this Munster-Leinster game, Owen. James Lowe loves playing against Munster as well. It's the snarling face of James Lowe that has pissed off so many Munster fans down through the years. That should be back this weekend. He is the man who owns the Pro 14. The Pro 14 has merely existed as a playground for James Lowe, and I do fear that something similar is going to pop up over the next couple of days. You're scared of it, but I'm very much looking forward to it. Fit to burst. Angry Stoke boss O'Neill fuming with Ireland as row over McLean availability is turned up a notch. This is interesting. James McLean arrived in Belgrade last night despite Michael O'Neill insisting that the winger wasn't fit to face Serbia. The Stoke boss was baffled last week when McLean was named in Stephen Kenny's squad after a foot injury. If we had a game on Wednesday night like Ireland have, James wouldn't be fit for the game, he said. This is Paul O'Hare's story in the Mirror. It's up to Ireland to assess him. They have the right to do that. That's the rules of international football. But he has not trained with us. Now, there's a great line about how he is a notoriously quick healer here. So, do we expect James McLean to play? I'd say he'd crawl over cut glass to play for Ireland this week. And we might need him. The Irish Sun, back page, keep calm and carry on. Robinson tells fans to hold tight now. Colin Robinson very calm in his media dealings, quite confident I thought as well. And then Southgate mind game. England boss Gareth Southgate is receiving help from a leading sports psychologist. This is the type of headline that you would have seen in the 90s on the back of the Sun. It was like, oh, he's talking to somebody about his head. He's a weirdo. And it's like, it's still a story. Man speaks to other man about thing. Or maybe it's a woman even. It's Michael Caulfield is the man he's speaking to. Yeah, like unless it's Steve Peters in the Chin Paradox or Uri Geller, it's not backpage news. We haven't talked to Uri Geller about the Mayo curse in a while, and we should roll that one out. It's about time. The Irish Daily Star, their back page is Danny Old Game. Did you get it? Yeah, because Danny rhymes with funny if you say Fanny instead of funny. Fanny, Fanny Old Game, innit? Danny Old Game. It doesn't rhyme with it. It doesn't. It certainly does not where we're from. Danny and funny do not rhyme. We should send a little voice recording to the Star. The Irish Times, their rugby section, coaching staff know this performance has saved 1 or 2 necks. It probably has. Key to successful Six Nations is unpredictability, says Thornley. And then the team of the tournament, he's got Sexton playing at 10. And it's hard to disagree, probably because I think Dan Biggar was really good. And if they hadn't taken him off, maybe they'd have won a Grand Slam. And then back page, final one for me, is back in frame. Coleman ready for return. That's the Daily Mail. And Clare on the brink of irrelevance, warns Loughnane. What's the story here? So we've seen the situation in Clare over the last few weeks. I mean, the Centre of Excellence in a state of disrepair. Questions about where the county board are taking things when it comes to hurling and camogie in particular. So basically, they've added camogie to the ticket when it comes to Club Clare. Club Clare is something that's existed since 2017 as a supporters group for Clare hurlers. Now they've added the camogie team into this as well. But it's basically a hook for a fresh push for Club Clare. And Ger Loughnane has written an open letter which accompanies a video. And in this open letter, he says, the first half of the last decade brought us so many hurling highlights at underage and senior level that it's difficult to put a hierarchy of satisfaction to these. My own highlight was the under-21 All-Ireland final in Thurles in 2013. What made that victory so special was towards the end of the game, Clare youngsters of various ages, girls and boys, seemed to emerge from nowhere and begin lining the perimeter of the field, hurleys in hand, waiting for the game to end. There seemed to be thousands of them there, and just as the final whistle sounded, they resembled a stream of locusts as they stormed onto the pitch, blotting out the Thurles turf. Looking on from the stand, I can still recall the joy I felt and the confidence I had that the future of Clare hurling was secure. You get the picture. He says, now less than 8 years later, we are in disarray so much that the gap between us and our main competitors is widening at a frightening rate. So basically, sign up to Club Clare is the message from Ger Loughnane. Give your county a dig out. It is €50 for an individual membership, €100 for a family membership. Nothing ridiculous there. I did do a bit of a look to see what is included. So if you register, this is for Clare people obviously, or maybe people outside of Clare who've got an affinity to the county, register on or before Saturday, May 1st to be placed into a draw for the opportunity to get a current senior from a list of 10 hurlers and 10 camogie players to provide a training session or talk with a nominated club team of your choice. I did look at the drop-down menu, and it is a top-class list in fairness. You can get Tony Kelly, for example, in the draw if you were to be a winner. You can get a Club Clare fleece-lined beanie. You can get a specially commissioned Club Clare pin badge and car bumper sticker. You get text alerts for all Clare team announcements in both hurling and camogie, and entry to members' draws for opportunities to win or purchase tickets for championship hurling and camogie games. And then there's a bi-monthly easing as well. I think the bottom line here is that Club Clare feel that they need money to get maybe the Centre of Excellence over the line to actually help with the inter-county costs that are going to come back with a bang once everybody gets vaccinated. And this is what they're trying to push at the moment. And Loughnane is right in what he's saying. Everybody thought that Clare were going to dominate the hurling landscape in 2013. That has not happened, and it's gone the other way, in fact.
All right, we'll keep an eye on the developments around Club Clare. If you've got anything you want to talk to us about that, we'd love to hear from you as well about Clare in particular. 0879 180 180 is the number. It is 8:27 this morning here on Tuesday, the 23rd of March. It's time to get up close and personal with Mike McCarthy and Devin Toner.
Hi, I'm Mike McCarthy, and today I'm getting up close and personal with Devin Toner. DEB, from the Calais Bowl selector. As you may be aware, I'm a big Devin Toner fan. He's my favourite player. And, you know, I'm very excited to speak to him today. So, Dev, thanks very much for joining us. Without further ado, sorry, I'm just going to introduce you. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, introducing Devin Toner.
Michael, it's great to see you. How are you, Dad?
Did you hear my entrance? That's some entrance, Dev.
The good, the bad, and the ugly, is it?
Did you? Yeah, you heard it.
Absolutely.
I thought if you were a boxer when you finished playing, because you remind me a bit of Tyson Fury, I thought that'd be a great entrance song for you to the boxing ring.
Okay, which one am I? The good, the bad, or the ugly?
You're the bad. You're the bad.
Oh,
You're the bad. Dev, I'm bloody excited. How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty good, Dad. I'm pretty good. All the better for seeing your face. I miss you.
Well, it's funny when there's a bit of cash thrown in, you're straight on the Zoom. I've been trying to get a Zoom call with you for the whole of lockdown.
There's cash, is there?
Well, not for me, but definitely is for you, my friend. Yeah, but you're well. You're good.
I'm flying. Yeah.
Great stuff. Great. Hey, Dev, listen, I want to get started. So first of all, you're on around 260 caps, which is absolutely incredible. So I think Darce, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Darcy's on about 261.
I think Darcy's on 261, yeah.
Mate, you properly Googled this, so like stop pretending you think. But anyway, yeah. How for the rest of the season, how much is that in your head, and what an amazing milestone and kind of record and legacy to leave for what you've done for Irish rugby and Leinster rugby. It'd be lovely to break the record, wouldn't it?
Like, it's easy to say that I'm not looking at it, but like, it's always in the back of your head, to be honest. Like, yeah, like when I reached 250, people were asking, "Oh, who has a record? Are you past it yet?" And I was like, but like, I didn't really know then, and then people started telling me. So like, every kind of game, it's kind of in your head that you're kind of getting closer and closer. So please God, I'm able to get it this year anyway.
Have you had that awkward conversation with Darcy yet?
No, I haven't seen Darcy at all. No, actually,
okay.
He's probably giving me the cold shoulder because of it.
Dev, look, listen, you've achieved so much in the game, mate, and a bit to go, hopefully as well. But 70 Irish caps, 260 Leinster caps, 4 Champions Cups, Pro 12, Pro 14, 6, 1 Grand Slam, 3 Six Nations winners. You are the GOAT, aren't you?
I'm far from it, Marker. Far from it.
Right, mate.
I've been very fortunate to be in part of some great squads over the years, and I very much know that I'm very fortunate to be part of it.
Mate, but that's absolutely amazing, and you're looking for a big finish now with the drive for 5, possibly another Champions Cup trophy, and another Pro 14.
Yeah, obviously we're in the Pro 14 final now against Munster, so hopefully we might be able to make that 4 in a row, because it was great getting that 3 in a row last year. So obviously we're looking at that, and again we got a bit of a tough draw. So we've got Toulon in the last 16, and then if we manage to get past them, we've got maybe Exeter away. But it's going to be a tough end to the season, to be honest. I'm just hoping to be able to get a few games in there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Dev, as we said, you achieved incredible amount in the game. So give us, if you had to choose one, okay, you can only choose one, right? I'm going to put you on the spot here. One, your favourite memory for Leinster and your favourite memory for Ireland.
I can't just pick one.
There must be one.
Okay, Leinster. It's hard to look past 2018. Obviously, because that was my 4th Champions Cup. I suppose the game against Racing, the final, is probably up there for me, because I probably felt a lot more involved that year, because I started a lot more, and I was more an integral part of the team, I suppose. And then we did the double as well, so we got the Pro 14 as well. So to do the double in 2018 for Leinster was phenomenal. And just the final against Racing and Bilbao was brilliant, because there was literally a sea of blue over there. Like, do you know what I mean? You go there and everyone was there with the flags out. The reception we got was unbelievable. So it was just a savage day. I know it probably wasn't the best game to watch, but it was.
It was lashing with rain, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't.
Yeah. It could have been us, in the semi-final against Toulon, but it wasn't to be. Never mind.
Could have been us. That was the extra time.
Yeah. Dev, favourite Irish moment?
Favourite Irish moment? There's a few as well.
Cool, there's a few. You are the go.
I can't look back. I can't look past Chicago, beating the All Blacks in Chicago, which is unbelievable. Again, the reception that we got was brilliant. My mother and my wife were able to fly over to see me over there playing it. It was a huge spectacle, and just the reception we got after the game was unbelievable as well. So All Blacks Chicago is probably up there. But again, I could say the first Six Nations I won when we beat France in the Stade de France over there was unbelievable. So there's a couple.
You beat the All Blacks twice, didn't you?
Yeah, bet them back in the Viva as well. Yeah.
You're just showboating now, aren't you? So yeah, talking about Ireland, you're the most capped player under Joe Schmidt. So Dev, just wanted to ask, how hard was it not making that World Cup squad, and how did you deal with that setback?
Yeah, it was pretty hard. It was pretty disappointing. I suppose I didn't think that there probably was a chance that I wasn't going to make it. So it was, when I saw his name pop up on the telephone, it was a bit of a shock. But I suppose it's how you deal with it. I was able to go back to Leinster. I was able to start playing well again for Leinster. Again, it's just that's how professional sport works. It's it's not all rainbows. You know what I mean? So it's just something you just got to put to the back and keep working. I obviously didn't work as hard as I thought as they thought I could have. I obviously didn't show enough in obviously the games leading up to the World Cup. So I obviously didn't do something to let me get selected. Do you know what I mean? So there's obviously a reason why I didn't. So I probably had to reflect a bit more on that. But got to go back to Leinster, and after that started kind of playing pretty well.
Yeah, and I suppose that's what it's all about. You see Josh van der Fleer coming back to Leinster recently, and there's no point in kind of sobbing over anything. You just got to move on and be the best you can be going forward, isn't it?
100%. Like, that's the nature of sport. Do you know what I mean? There's always going to be setbacks. You know, it's just how you deal with the setbacks.
Yeah. And where do you watch the Ireland games now? Well, probably a stupid question because of COVID, but you obviously watch it at home on the sofa with Max and Grace climbing over you. But do you find it difficult watching Ireland play now, or I know you as a person, so I know you'd only want the best and for them to do great. But I like, because I retired 3 years ago, I still find it hard watching some games for Leinster, and so yeah. How do you find it?
Yeah, like, I'm sure you're the same. Like, I do really enjoy watching it. But again, I obviously want everyone to do well, and I want Ireland to do well. Absolutely, 100%. Do you know what I mean? Because I was literally just part of the squad like last year. Do you know what I mean? So I really want them to do well. So like, I don't have any ill feelings or anything towards them. Do you know what I mean? I'm quite happy with how my kind of Ireland career has ended, to be honest. And I'm at ease with it. So I'm kind of I'm able to watch them now with a bit more ease, I suppose.
You're probably sitting on the sofa calling the line-outs here, visualising, and
I think that just happens naturally. You're kind of thinking in your head, oh, what would I do in that situation, or would I done something differently there, or I don't know. Yeah, so that's what you naturally do anyway.
Dev, I forgot to show you, mate. Sorry.
You didn't. You're not aware.
I forgot I had it on, actually.
You forgot, yeah. You're absolutely.
No, I did. I knew I put it on, but I forgot I had it on. So you're aware I've got this T-shirt, aren't you?
I am aware you've got that T-shirt. Yes.
The real Dev, and my daughter's got one. Mate, I am genuinely your biggest fan. Like, does it freak you out a little bit sometimes? Have you seen my Zoom name is Dev? So like at work, I have the Zoom name of Dev, and I get asked the question, why is your name Dev? So sometimes I've got.
So why do you have it as Dev?
Because I've explained it. You're my favourite player.
Do you know I still walk around UCD now, and I still find pieces of tape with Dev written on them, taped everywhere. Like, the people have gone around trying to take them down, but they still find them everywhere. Macker went around the whole of UCD writing Dev on piece of tape and sticking them to the walls.
It's hard to explain, Dev, isn't it? I don't think people really get it, but yeah, I've still got my spies. I was on to James Treacy recently, and and Gareth, the physio, they've been putting some more stickers up on the ceiling.
Oh, have they?
I'm glad to hear they're still there 3 years later, mate. So, Dev, listen, how old are you? You're 39, 40 now?
Yeah, coming up on 40, yeah.
35, is it?
Come on, 34.
34, all right. Yeah, so, look, you're at Leinster still. What's the plans? You plan to play for another year, 2 years, 3 years? How's the body? What's the plan going forward?
Body's feeling great, to be honest. I reckon I'll probably have a year or two left of me, to be honest. Still up in the air what I'm doing next year. Currently in negotiations, so I haven't made any decisions really, to be honest. So it'll all kind of come out in the next probably month or two what the plans are. But body's feeling great. Touch wood, I've had no really bad injuries, so yeah, no, all good.
I've got a couple more questions to ask you, actually. Just
fire away.
Can you remember your first Leinster cap and tell me a bit about it, and also your first Irish cap? Tell me a little bit about that.
First Leinster cap was versus the Border Reivers in Donnybrook. Myself and a little known out half, I think Johnny Sexton was his name. He was in the bench alongside me. So we both came on that day against Border Reivers. I think I replaced Adam Burns. He was an Aussie second row for Leinster then. We obviously ended up winning. Played about 20 minutes.
You and Sexto made your debut on that same game?
Yep.
That's mad, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, sure. Like I've played with Sexto since school, since Leinster schools, 6th year in school, like so 17, like so. Played with them all the way up.
The two old goats still going strong, eh?
Two old goats. He's a year older than me though. He's 35 going on 36.
Right, okay. And then first Irish cap?
First Irish cap was against Samoa in 2010.
Didn't you got binned in that, didn't you?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so I thought, no, I'm not joking. I thought you did, but you must have.
No, I've never got binned in an Ireland game.
Okay.
I don't think. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. But yeah, against Samoa in De Viva. And it wasn't the best of days, so it was quite rainy. So it wasn't very free-flowing. But it was a phenomenal, I suppose, just experience, having the whole family in the crowd, the legends that were playing around, like, do you know what I mean? So like John Hayes was playing. I was playing alongside Donnacha O'Callaghan, Ron O'Gara, Peter Stringer, all the lads, Draco. Do you know what I mean? So it was phenomenal to get the first cap then.
Devin, during your time at Leinster, you played with some pretty amazing second rows, some kind of absolute legends. Now I know you would have probably picked me, and I told you not before this. I said,
naturally,
question, don't pick me. But if you had to pick, who's probably the best second row you played with at Leinster? Is that putting you in an awkward position? Maybe I
can't pick one. Like, do you know what I mean? Okay. I can't pick one. There's been so many. Like, do you know what I mean? So like, tell us about some of the the great. Well, I was supposed to the first three.
Don't mention me, because just for this Zoom, don't mention me.
I won't mention you. Yeah, I know. Yeah, whatever. The first three Highland Cup finals, like, so I was on the bench for the first three. Like, so it was Leo started them all. So the first one was Leo. I was behind Mal, so Malcolm O'Kelly. The second one was behind Heinze. So Nathan Hines was phenomenal, and then the third one was behind Brad Thorne. Do you know what I mean? So they're all brilliant lads to learn from. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I learned so much off Leo. Like, I didn't play a lot with Leo because we were obviously two line-out callers, and I kind of got my shot when Leo got injured. Do you know what I mean? So we never really kind of played together. So, and then you look at now. Do you know what I mean? So James Ryan is one of the best talents out there. Do you know what I mean? So. I love playing with Ross Maloney because he's a really good line-out leader as well. So when the two of us are playing together, it's kind of like we're asking each other, what do you think is going to work, and what do you think this will work, and like, he's a great bailout option if it obviously something's on. Like, so there's it's too hard to pick one. You can't pick one. Yeah. But if I was, it'd be you.
Oh yeah, well, I know. Yeah. Here, Dev, listen. Here, we'll wrap up, mate. It's been great to catch up with you and chat to you. Don't leave it a year again until we speak again. I mean,
man, my phone is always on. You never reply to my texts.
You've burned me a few times. Come on, but
come on,
Dev. Listen, you honestly, what a cracking career you've had, and look, hopefully you play on for another 2 or 3 years. So well done, mate. And listen, great to chat to you, and thanks for your time, buddy.
Thanks, bud. All the best. Yeah. I hope you're well. Hope the family well.
Yeah, a proper bromance there between two former second row buddies, and they clearly love each other. Turns out that when you pack down behind somebody in the scrum, that there is a bond that it turns out nothing can break, not even retirement. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning to start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Mike McCarthy and, of course, Devin Toner there. Dev was a little bit embarrassed, but actually kind of warmed up to enjoying the love that he was getting.
Yeah, like this is one of these things that maybe not a lot of people are overly familiar with, unless maybe you follow Mike McCarthy on social media. Then you'll be very familiar with his love for Devin Toner. If you're coming to that cold and are not aware of the running joke about Mike McCarthy's bromance with Devin Toner, then you might have got a bit of a rude awakening while watching that piece. And I think that piece will serve to show that it is a bromance that runs from Devin Toner to Mike McCarthy as well, because I was never sure whether or not it was one-way traffic, where this was some sort of unrequited bromantic love coming from Mike McCarthy towards Devin Toner. But no, it seems Devin Toner likes him too.
The second row seem to have a type of personality as well. Malcolm O'Kelly, I can see kind of being in that long lineage of Mike McCarthy and ongoing. So anyway, look, let's come back to that. Neil Treacy is with us this morning. Neil, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good, guys. How are you doing?
Yeah, look, I've been talking up this Leinster-Munster game. I was reliably informed by my producer it's too early in the week to be getting excited about this, but it's not. It's not. This game this weekend is going to be good.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Definitely not too early to be getting excited about. I think if anything, the excitement from, or the result from last week, it just kind of feeds into that excitement even more, because you're just running straight off. All right, that's the Six Nations chat done, and all of a sudden there's a Pro 14 final on the horizon. It's actually an unbelievable few weeks. We're in the middle of this unbelievable few weeks for rugby coming up, because you have the tail end of the Six Nations. You have Pro 14 final, Munster against Leinster this weekend. Weekend after that, you have Leinster-Toulon on the Friday night. You've got Munster against Toulouse on the Saturday. And fingers crossed, the week after that, you have, and also as well, you've got Ulster and Connacht, I should say, in Challenge Cup action that weekend. And then the following weekend, you've got quarterfinals, which hopefully we're going to have at least some Irish teams involved in over the course of those couple of games. So an absolutely brilliant few weeks ahead, and definitely not too early to be getting excited about Munster and Leinster.
I think the pendulum has swung Munster's favour with the injury news as well. I said this yesterday in the show. The confirmation about who was out came after the show, but like Leinster are missing some serious firepower.
They really are. And like I had to include in the bulletin, which I'll get to later on, but as we say, James Ryan, Gary Ringrose and Will Connors all out as well. And I don't know, I'm starting to feel like, is it Munster's time?
Yes.
Is this the week that they're actually going to do? Is this the year they're going to do it? We're talking 10 years on since their last trophy. And like, it's funny, I was only thinking a couple of weeks back, do you remember, it was probably the tail end of August, the couple of days after Munster and Leinster played in the Pro 14, the resumption of the Pro 14, Orge Snyman had done his cruciate that day, 7 minutes into his debut. He brought me on for a quick little flash when the news was confirmed, when you were on air on the show, that Snyman had in fact done his cruciate. He was out for the season. And I actually do distinctly remember, like, one of the questions we were trying to discuss was, is that Munster's season done? Is this season already a write-off? And how foolish do we look now?
Neil, I would say tread carefully here, because what Ger is about to do is he's about to yarra away Leinster's chances as if they aren't the best team in Europe. That's what he's going to do. So just mind yourself, Neil. That's just a heads up. He's been doing it to me for the last 2 weeks.
No, I mean, have some balls. That's all I'll say to you, Owen Sheehan. Like, this is a brilliant team that has been slowly, steadily adding layer after layer after layer after layer, and suddenly there's a couple of injuries they have, but not stuff that they can't deal with. They have their best players rounding into form. They have depth in key places, and we've seen just how important desire and motivation are. Two of their Warriors are playing their last ever, potentially, certainly their last ever Pro 14 game. In a final, is this not all set up for a joint lift between CJ and Billy Holland at the weekend?
And what I would say as well, to add to it as well, I don't think you can talk Munster up enough this week, because for how many times over the course of the last 3 or 4 seasons have we come into a Leinster and Munster week, whether it's in the middle of a season or whether it's a Pro 14 semi-final, which Leinster have inevitably won over the course of the last few seasons, where like the main thing we've been talking about for the week is this even a rivalry anymore? Is the Leinster-Munster rivalry dead? Well, I think we cannot talk Munster up enough this week, because the more you do, the more it's going to build up that tension and build up the rivalry, not just for this weekend, but for hopefully a few more years down the line.
Yeah, it finally feels like those young players that we've been hearing so much about in the Munster Academy have made it to the level where they're putting genuine pressure on the starters, and the starters have improved as a result of that. So you've got that weird, heady blend of incredible levels of experience, nous, and now the brio of youth as well, who have finally got enough game time, who have finally got enough experience to be able to do themselves justice in a game like this at the weekend. We said this yesterday, Munster are 7-point favourites. Leinster are 7-point favourites. I could not make Leinster 7-point favourites. I think maybe 1.5 points. This is a one-score game for me at the end this weekend, either way.
Yeah, I'd be going along those lines as well. I would say 7 does seem like a lot. I was thinking they were probably going to be 2 or 3 point favourites. Personally, I actually do think Munster might actually beat them this weekend. And look, if they do manage to actually get their hands on the trophy this weekend, I think you're going to look back at the probably October-November period in Munster season as being the absolute formative period for those players, because they were missing so many players consistently when, Ireland were in action in the Autumn Nations Cup and the tail end of the Six Nations. And that was the opportunity you got to see Gavin Coombs getting a lot of game time, Ben Healy getting a lot of game time, Craig Casey as well. A lot of those younger players, even Finian Wycherley, who's been established in the team for a couple of years, all of a sudden there were younger guys probably looking at him to be more of a leader in the team. And I think that was probably an incredibly formative time for those players. And it's one we'd probably look back on as well if they do get over the line. Even the likes of Damien Dale Ende, who I think has been absolutely brilliant this season for Munster, particularly in the games when the other internationals haven't been around. That he's been one of those leaders who's been able to carry through some of those younger guys. If you were to look at, you know, the amount of tries he scored, he's only scored 1 try, but I don't think really Munster signed him to score tries. They signed him to be a massive presence in midfield and a big presence in the squad for those younger players, which is something he's absolutely been.
Yeah. Look, I'm incredibly excited about it. And Owen, get on the bandwagon, get enjoying this. None of this like protecting yourself with the veneer of studied irony. No, you're a sports fan. You've got to love it.
We did an item on the show last month, which I'm sure Neil Treacy will remember, about whether or not the Munster-Leinster rivalry is ready to explode back into life again. I was certainly on the side that this rivalry is back. You were on the side that it's not. So take your short-term memory and run away with it.
Things have changed. New information came to light. The rug really brings the room together, Owen. Come on. That's the thing. It's like, look, Carberry's back. CJ's going. New information came to light. You've got to agree that we did not have all of the available information at that point. That's all I'm saying. No Caelan Doris, no Ringrose, James Lowe's questionable form. Who else? Will Connor's missing. I think all of a sudden, James Ryan missing. That's game on.
To what level are we going to expect some sort of needle here? Because I always go back to that first game that Neil references there, when you had De Allende and Sneijman playing, and you had this real tension actually between De Allende and Sexton. Felt on the night. Obviously there was a low blow, wasn't there, on Sexton from De Allende, which of course we don't condone. But if people can do like less low blows, but bring that same level of aggression and winding up the men in blue, that would be a welcome sight, I think, for everybody. Because the thing is, James Lowe and maybe some of his counterparts as well are going to be doing that all night long to Munster. That's one thing here, Neil. Like, what is James Lowe as a Munster fan? Watching James Lowe against Munster, one of the most annoying things, one of the most frustrating things, because A, he's really, really good, and B, he likes to do that really handsome smile that he's got when he does something really good.
Yeah, I certainly know quite a few Munster fans that he seriously gets under their skin when they're up against him. Obviously, they were fully behind him when he was in a green jersey with Ireland, but he just absolutely loves playing Munster, and I think he loves being involved in those games where there is a bit of niggle and there is a bit of tension just kind of simmering beneath the surface. And I certainly think definitely in the last year, as you kind of mentioned, that game back in August where De Allende threw in a little late one on Johnny Sexton, there was just that little bit of simmering tension throughout, which is always good for those big derby games. I think the fact as well that this is a final, like they wouldn't have met in a final since that game back in 2011, which Munster won at Thomond Park. Like, they've met in the knockout stages of the Pro 14 over the last few seasons. All of those were semi-finals, and they've probably come at times when things have felt maybe a little bit flat and there was an air of inevitability about what Leinster were going to do to Munster. It just feels like there's more of an even keel this week.
But you know, I've just realised as well, because it's a final, because it's in the Aviva, it would have been sold out. Like, it absolutely...
No, it's
sorry, but it would have been in the Aviva if
no, because the soccer game, Ireland and
so
Ireland,
it would always have been the RDS anyway.
Yeah. It had to be at the RDS, even if there were going to be fans.
I guess if there was no COVID, then we probably wouldn't be playing it this week because the tournament would have gone on. But my point was that, like, a fully sold out big stadium with a trophy on the line between these two teams, that is something that we're definitely going to feel just as the anthem happens, it'll be like, oh man, we're missing out on a proper occasion here. With two teams, Munster finally worthy opponents, and I think potentially going to win this game this weekend. Neil, we've blasted through all our time by talking about that, but we're going to whet the appetite a bit more on the Type 5 tomorrow. So thanks very much for that. We're going to leave that there, and we're going to somehow manage to stoke up Owen's excitement levels over the next while. If you want to get involved in this, please do. 087 9 180 180 is the number. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. I want to tell you about what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio across the day. OTB Sports Radio streams all day, every day. You can get it on Alexa. Just say, Alexa, play OTB Sports Radio. We've got Keith Andrews meeting Philly McMahon at 1 o'clock. That's OTB Gold. At 2 o'clock, it's our Paddy Power special today. Our special Serbia preview with Gary Breen and Kevin Kilban is from 2 o'clock. At 3, it's a very special crappy quiz from 3 o'clock. Paddy Power half hour coming your way from 3:30. Danny Murphy's career retrospective live at 4. And OTB Gold tonight is Cora Staunton at 6. And then, of course, the show is live on the radio this evening from 7. At 8:54 this morning, though, I'm delighted to say that we're joined now by Irish star Nadia Power, who's just been announced as a Toyota ambassador and is set to play a central role in Toyota's Start Your Impossible campaign, which celebrates the best of human performance. Toyota are worldwide mobility partner to the Olympic and Paralympic Games. Check out more at toyota.ie. Nadia, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm good.
Yeah, no worries. Before we get into actually what's going on, I always feel like it's important to acknowledge that the support that sponsors give athletes, particularly individual athletes, really gives you a sense of security and freedom, which I'm not sure everybody fully understands just how precarious the life of a full-time athlete is, because there's a tiny grant, and that gets soaked up by your travel costs and your coaching costs and your nutrition costs and your science costs and all that kind of stuff. And actually, it's very difficult to live as a young athlete representing our country. We don't always support them financially enough. So days like today are quite big, I suspect, for you and for anybody else who is an ambassador.
Yeah, no, it's super helpful, and you summed it up perfectly there. I think a lot of people will be surprised how hard financially it is for athletes, especially just with all the travel costs and stuff like that. And I think a lot of us can go competing for Ireland throughout our 20s and then end up like kind of significantly behind in terms of mortgages and stuff like that. So yeah, Toyota's support is really, really exciting. And I'm lucky enough as well to be supported by DCU as I'm currently in college, so that helps a lot too.
Is that something that you kind of need to think about, or is it a kind of little constant nagging voice on your shoulder, like the rest of the world is going ahead and I'm doing this thing to represent me, but also to represent my country, and there's a little bit of a trade-off to be made there?
Yeah, no, it's definitely something I think about, and I guess I kind of look at the next few years and I'm like, oh, I don't know, like financially, I'm sure I'll have enough to keep me going, but I don't know, like, and kind of do what I need to do athletics-wise, but, you know, it's hit or miss whether or not we'll have enough to kind of save for a house and stuff like that you would usually want to do in your 20s. But for me, like, I'm bought into the dream, so that's the price I'll pay to achieve my goals over the next few years.
Nadia, let's talk about this unbelievable year that you've had so far. Can we go back to the start of 2021? This was something from your perspective, I'd imagine, which you saw coming to the country at large. I guess people were blown away by your own performances at the start of this year. Can you talk us through the first couple of months and what was going on and how you managed to achieve such high levels of performance at the start of this calendar year?
Yeah, so at the end of every season, I kind of say the same thing. I look back at what went well, and then I think how can I be better. So that's definitely what I did over the winter, and my head was definitely down, and I was working really hard. And then at the start of January, I went on training camp with a new group. So I just thought it would be good for me to train with people who are better than me and push me on. And I needed to learn from girls who have been to the Olympics, have won European titles. So I went and trained with a Swiss coach called Louise Galvin, and he coaches Selena Bouchel, who's double European indoor champion, so it shows how good she is. And then another athlete as well was there called Louise Galvin. So and she's ran 158 and went to the Olympics too. So that was kind of the level up I needed, because I think although I'm really good at applying myself and working hard and I've been improving regularly, I needed that like confidence boost of seeing girls who have like got to the top level, in my opinion, and kind of I needed to point out to myself that I wasn't that different and that I was capable of doing it. And I think that training camp really gave me that boost.
Was that basically just to compare your times to them, to see their methods and see, hold on a minute, I'm absolutely at their level?
Yeah, I think it's like we put Olympians and like European champions, European medalists on a pedestal. I certainly did as an athlete all along, and I had this kind of thing in my head when I was younger that I can work really hard, but I like, oh, that wouldn't happen to me. You know, I can never be that good. I'm not destined to be there or something. So I'm kind of, the last 2 years been just like trying to slowly chip away at that and like make sure in my head mentally I like know I can get there, and hard work actually can give you a reward. So yeah, it's still a process and I'm still not there yet, but there's definitely been like huge steps made towards that.
That's really interesting. Like, what else do you do on a day-to-day basis to try and build that confidence?
Yeah, I work a lot on my mindset. I work with Jessie Barr from the Sport Institute. So obviously she's a past athlete. So I guess we work on like race preparation, but I also work on stuff like self-belief and kind of like tactics, and just it's hard to put your finger on, but it's just always how can we improve.
That improves your mentality.
I think discussing, focusing on evidence works a lot. Like maybe, I guess, before the European Under-23s, this would be 2 years ago, but like I was kind of going in and I wanted to win a medal, but I was like, oh, you know, I was still thinking that was too good to be true. That didn't really, why would that happen to me? That was too good to be true. So we kind of would list out like evidence of why I could do that based on my past performances, and like just seeing it there.
Not in front of the cameras all the time and performing, especially during COVID, those moments of self-doubt perhaps can come into play.
Yeah, I take a lot of confidence from training, and my coach Anna is amazing at kind of helping my confidence and stuff and boosting me up. So like I did come into this indoor season quite confident in myself and my ability. Like I 100% knew I could break the Irish record. I guess I wouldn't have predicted what else was to come and who else was also going to break the Irish record as well. But I knew I had that in me this season, and I did start my first race really, really confident and stuff. So yeah, no, it was a good season, but already I'm kind of looking forward and thinking about how I can be better.
So what do you put it down to then, the fact that the record is broken multiple times?
I think it's like, if we raise the bar for each other, I think that's it, to be honest. Like I know Shifa quite well, and like I know last summer when I ran like 2:01 and broke the under 23 record, like she messaged me and was like well done, like, you know, you're raising the bar for us. And then I think she probably would have said something similar to me as well after I broke the record again. So and equally, like I would have trained with her over Christmas, and we would have discussed, you know, like how we want to just keep up in our standards and be better and stuff like that. So I think all of us seeing each other do it kind of spurs us on and gives us confidence. But it's been amazing, the effect of it, and I can already see it because like my mindset has changed now, because now I'm like, well, the rest of the girls in Ireland are so good, I need to run an Olympic standard. Like that's my new goal. So I've already like raised my standards as a result for this summer, just from the competition in Ireland. So it is positive for us all.
Do you have to learn to be gracious when your record gets broken, or is that something you already have? That congratulations to Shifa, for example, is that just a little bit difficult at the moment when it happens?
I know there's a part of it that stings. Like we all want a lot for each other, but we all want to be the best. And like we wouldn't be elite athletes if we weren't that competitive. So like obviously I want to get that record back next year and stuff like that. But I think it's when you like know the journey of all the girls and stuff, and you know what they've been through as well, and how hard they work, and me kind of like meeting up with Shifa and training with her over Christmas a little bit kind of like makes me see the background of it. I don't just see a time and a good result that I'm jealous of. I see like the work behind it, and I know she wants it so bad as well. So yeah, no, it does. There's two sides to it, but I know it's good for me as an athlete, no matter how much it kind of stings at the time.
It's such a weird dynamic, really, when you're teammates and competitors at the same time, and you kind of need each other to drive each other on, but you also want to win.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is a weird dynamic, but I think we're missing that a little bit in Ireland. Like I know kind of back when there's the era of great 1500 metre runners, I'm sure that's why they all brought each other on, and I think hopefully we're coming into that a little bit now. It's definitely not comparable just yet, but it's the most competitive women's 800 has ever been in Ireland. So yeah, it's a weird dynamic, but it will definitely ultimately result in us all being better athletes. I know that for sure.
What is your schedule like between now and what's supposed to happen later on in the year, and how is the uncertainty feeding into even how you plan your scheduling and your different the different periodization of the training that you're going to do?
Yeah, well, I guess for me as an athlete, the Olympics is in the calendar, the national championships are in the calendar, and I don't even give a second's thought to whether or not they're on. In my opinion anyway, I think they 100% will be on, but either way, as an athlete preparing, they're on, and I don't need to think otherwise because it doesn't serve me and my preparation. So the Olympics are on at the end of July, obviously, and then nationals, where like that would be the final race when the kind of qualifying period is over, is at the end of June. And then as of now, my focus is get all my college assignments done and get back training kind of in a more endurance block over the next kind of 3 weeks or so. And then I'm going to go training on a training camp. And so I'm just trying to get as much kind of college work, other life stuff done before that. And then so I can really, really just get the head down and focus on resting, racing and recovering from kind of mid-April.
you obviously were part of the American collegiate system, and you've seen the Irish collegiate system. When you were a kid coming up as an athlete, we would very much as a country have been focused on sending our best athletes to America. That seems to have flipped around quite significantly with the investment in DCU and just the general level of improvement that we've made in the numbers of people coming through. What's your take now? If you were to go back to yourself as a 15, 16-year-old, would you say not to go to America at all? Would you advise teenagers not to consider that, or do you still need to consider it? And are you actually better for having gone through that process too?
Yeah, I think obviously it really didn't work out for me, but I think I am probably better from the fact I went and figured it out and got a little bit of independence from it. And now I know that that setup didn't suit me and my setup in DCU does. So I think I would still advise a younger athlete, if they have an opportunity, to try it, because they won't necessarily have the same experience as me. Everyone's experience will be completely unique. So you do just need to try it yourself. But I also think now we can definitely say for sure it's not the only way. And maybe sometimes people thought it was the only way. I think I maybe would have thought it was the only way, or by far the best way to make it as an athlete. So I think, 15, 16-year-olds now can see there's two ways to do it, and just to do whatever works for them and whatever setup they're happiest with, can lead to their success.
In retrospect, is there anything that you could have done differently in America to have made that process work for you, or was it just not a fit at all?
I think just at the time when I visited schools in, I think, 6 years, so I visited University of Virginia, I visited Iona, which I think a number of Irish athletes are there now, and I visited Providence, which also has a rich Irish history, and I actually chose the college that had no Irish history at all, just because I liked it best. So obviously I could have went there, and I could still be there now and be finishing up my fourth year and be, have done well in the NCAA. I don't know. So I think I'd made the right decisions in University of Virginia, and I kind of clocked that it wasn't good for me quite early and came home and kind of saved the situation before I fell out of love with running and got injured. So I think I made the right decisions there, but obviously things can be so different if I went to a different school, and that's kind of the point I'd like to get across a teenager, that everyone's experience is different depending on the school and who you are.
The ability to come back from something like that is not something that every teenager has. Football in particular is littered with superstar kids who go over to the big clubs in England and don't make it and then never play again, even though they could have gone on to have a great career. So I guess you must give yourself a lot of, when you're talking about the confidence, and when you're doing those training sessions with Jessie Barrett, you've got a lot of material to fall back on. Yeah, definitely. And I think it all just comes down to being happy overall as an athlete. I think you're going to run well if you're happy overall. And I wasn't happy in Virginia. And then I came home and I went to DCU and I moved to Enda, and I was happy with that setup, and, felt it was the right amount of kind of competitiveness in DCU training the first year I was there. And I was pushed to the next level. And then the support has continued, and then just Enda has been just absolutely instrumental the whole way in instilling confidence in me, and just we get, moving up step by step. And so I think, it's just wherever you're happy, you're going to do well. So I think I'm just lucky to have found that setup. And from the outside and looking in over the last kind of year and a half, it seems like there is a genuine buzz around Irish athletics at the moment, where the Irish Vest is going to various international meets and performing at a level that is where we're supposed to be, really. It feels like we're getting back to a point where people are going out and doing personal bests on the big day, and it's been a while since we had a lot of people doing that together. Do you feel like you're part of a bigger athletics community at that level, or because you're so specifically focused on your own times that it's almost irrelevant who else is doing it around you?
Oh no, it definitely matters. I think it definitely matters. We give each other a boost and inspire each other, and I think athletics in Ireland is just such a small community. We all know each other well, and no, it makes a big difference. And I think we definitely all had that feeling this year. I'm just I was even, in France, I stayed with some of the 1500 guys, and then Isolde and Michelle as well, who also went to European indoors. So we all were kind of in the same journey in France, trying to find races, trying to get qualifying times, trying to get Olympic points. So all of us doing that together and going through the uncertainties and the kind of logistical issues there really helped, and we push each other on. And it's super important, and I think we'll just keep seeing the results of it now.
Just one last one for me, Nadia. Do you have a target time-wise now, given the way the first few months of the year has gone? Do you have a new future personal best in mind?
Yeah, I think I would have never thought I would have said it, but now I think given the standard of 800 and just overall, I think maybe in Ireland we need to set our standards a little bit higher. So I'm kind of looking at the summer saying I'd love to run that Olympic standard, which is 1:59.5, and it's faster than the Irish record. So I'm hopefully in a position where it's not, I can make the Olympics if I don't do that, but I think it will only serve me to be better as an athlete, and if I do set that standard for myself. So that's the big goal I have now for the summer.
Where would you do that, do you think? What meet, or do you have a specific kind of period of the summer where you think that's going to be achievable?
Yeah, I guess you want to do it in kind of late May or June and before the Olympics. But so kind of with times in 800 you can't really plan. It always takes me a good few to get going. I think I really showed that this year. I kept running 2:02 and then I got down to 2:00, and I kind of have a bad habit of doing that. So maybe you can expect it around my 4th or 5th race this season, most likely.
Well, we'll keep a very close eye on it. Nadia, congratulations on the new ambassadorship, and best of luck with this year, because it promises to be a special one. Thanks a million for joining us.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
It's Nadia Power there, who's just been announced as a Toyota ambassador as they launch their Start Your Impossible campaign, which celebrates the best of human performance. Toyota are worldwide mobility partner to the Olympic and Paralympic Games. Check out more over at toyota.ie. It is 12 minutes past 9 this morning here on OTB AM. If you've just joined us, you missed out our Six Nations recap with Louise Galvin, our interview there with Irish star Nadia Power, and Mike McCarthy and Devin getting up close and personal. You can catch it all back on our YouTube stream after the show. Get over to YouTube and subscribe there, and anytime we go live, we'll send you a little message. Or, of course, you can subscribe to the OTB AM podcast, which is available in all your podcast apps by 10 o'clock every morning. Later on this hour, we'll bring you Brian O'Driscoll and Keith Wood. We're back after these, previewing Ireland-Serbia with Nathan and Stephen.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio. Off the ball.
And he also said to ask him about the Hummer golf buggy I saw him driving in Portugal.
Yeah, well, the Hummer golf buggy, it wasn't mine, it was a friend of mine's, and I rented his place, and that was his buggy to get about. So yeah, it was interesting. I was trying to keep my head down at times, but it was a little bit, yeah. Not sure what Roy Keane would have made of it.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1.
This is OTB Sports Radio, live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Tom Watson, you're welcome to Golf Weekly.
Hey, this is going to be fun.
Very happy to say European captain and, of course, 3-time major winner Padraig Carrington joins us.
Today's special guest on Golf Weekly is Lee Westwood.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I'm honoured and delighted.
Let's bring in Paul McGinley, who joins us now. Paul, you're very welcome.
Shane Lowry, how are you keeping?
I'm good, thanks, yeah. Well, I'm as good as I can be.
The biggest names in golf and Ireland's best golf podcast, Golf Weekly, now exclusively available on Patreon. Go to otbsports.com/Golf Weekly to sign up now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
You're welcome back. It is 13 minutes past 9 on this Tuesday morning, and we are turning our attention to tomorrow night's World Cup qualifier between Serbia and the Republic of Ireland. Nathan Murphy and Stephen Doyle are with us. Good morning, lads.
Morning, everyone.
Nathan, we've got another member of the Serbian camp, Stefan Mitrovic, this time coming out referring to Ireland and their British style, counter-attacking style. This is just par for the course, really, at this point. Everybody who comes out before an Ireland game says these sorts of things.
Well, I think if that's how they're going to set up, that may work in Ireland's favour because, well, traditionally that has been what Irish teams have done. That's what Ireland did the last time they went to Belgrade 3.5 years ago. Even with getting the early goal, Ireland sat back and tried to counter-attack. But the plan, from everything we've heard from Stephen Kenny and from what we saw in that game against Slovakia, is not just to be a counter-attacking team. It's that when they get hold of the ball, to actually try and control the game. So maybe if Serbia are looking at previous iterations of this Irish squad, they may be in for something of a surprise. But they're obviously very, very confident. not built on a huge amount at senior level. They've had incredible success at underage level, winning underage World Cups, but they haven't been able to transfer that to the senior team at any stage. And Serbia have been the great underachievers of European football in the last 5-6 years. When you look at the talent that has been at their disposal, even when you look over the last decade, when they had the likes of Branislav Ivanovic, Alex Kolarov, Nemanja Matic, to never have qualified for European Championship, to have struggled to get to World Cups when they do get there, to have fallen flat on their face. This is a group and a country, I think, that needs to start stepping up at international level. So, yeah, they're able to talk the talk. They have a new manager. Let's see how they get on tomorrow night.
Stephen, is there any weird sense of confidence growing from an Irish perspective this week? That intangible thing sometimes that can happen before a big sporting event.
I was just thinking, wait till Serbia get a load of Kenny ball and they see it start knocking around the park. It's not going to be anything like the British football they're expecting. Yeah, it's funny, because as you know, the League of Ireland season started last weekend, and I was kind of comparing that kind of feeling that fans of domestic clubs will have just going into a new season, where that sense of anticipation, that sense of hope, before it all gets dashed within 90 minutes of your first match. But I would hope that hope and that we all have going into a new campaign, that can kind of be sustained for a little bit longer. As Leighton said, look, Serbia are the great underachievers. And I think if we go out there, the interesting thing, there's been a lot of talk about the stadium and the way there's going to be no fans, it won't be as intimidating. Nathan, were you at that last game in Belgrade? I was there, I remember. There wasn't a huge amount of supporters at it. There was only about 15,000 home supporters. So the atmosphere wasn't really too...
No, it was still quite... It was one of the most intimidating places I went to. I remember going to pick up my press pass in advance, and the atmosphere, as the queue grew longer, wasn't the most welcoming. But you're right. You might remember the game was almost called off. The pitch was pretty much waterlogged, and there were doubts right up until about 10 minutes before kickoff as to whether or not it would actually go ahead. Maybe that contributed to it, but it certainly wasn't what the sort of welcome to hell going to Galatasaray back in the day style feeling that we all throw out there, the sort of stereotypical going to Eastern Europe. It's going to be intimidating. The players are used to playing in front of empty stadiums at this stage. Yes, it probably is an advantage. If by the time we come back in September and we can have a full Aviva stadium, it would certainly be an advantage. But I don't think it was going to be something that would strike fear into the hearts of the players going to Belgrade.
And as well, no, Nathan, I've been saying this for years, but and I think Dan McDonald might have said it to Joe last night on the radio, that I don't think Luxembourg are going to be the pushovers that many people think they will be. They are a progressive footballing nation. They were quite unlucky actually not to get promoted in their UEFA Nations League. They had a bit of a disaster against Cyprus in the kind of key game that would have got them up. They got a man sent off pretty early on. So I think that Luxembourg game might be a little bit tougher than people expect as well.
Yeah, God, you've actually been banging the Luxembourg drum for a few years, Stephen. So this has been coming. You have given us this warning quite sometimes. You've both picked your starting 11s. I know you were on with us, a month ago, picking the starting 11s as well. This is obviously going to be far more accurate. You both gone for the same goalkeeper and the same back four. And the question mark really is around that centre-back partnership. I think the consensus now seems to be that Kieran Clark is definitely going to start. And you both agree that Darragh O'Shea is the man to start beside him. Why not Shane Duffy, Nathan? I know the answer to that is quite obvious, but did you consider the fact that Duffy maybe can park his Celtic form on an international stage?
And I think he can park the Celtic form on the international stage. And also, if he does start, there'll be a big difference from back in the autumn, because Seamus Coleman, in all likelihood, will be alongside him at right back, who offers a different sort of protection than when Matt Doherty is there. I wouldn't be shocked if he stuck with Shane Duffy. He did make a point, Stephen Kenny, at the squad announcement that Shane Duffy has never let his country down. Yes, he's had a difficult time, but in a green jersey, he feels he is still delivering. And the fact that Randolph isn't there, the fact that John Egan is gone, maybe he feels that going with Darragh O'Shea might just be a little bit too much inexperience in the side. But Kieran Clark has been around for a decade at this stage. It's a real shame that Kieran Clark has only 34 caps. I don't feel that John Egan's loss is a catastrophic loss at the heart of the defence. I think Kieran Clark, at his best, fully fit, is Ireland's best centre-half. So it's brilliant that he's coming in actually for once with a run of games. He actually played a lot of games in the last World Cup qualifying campaign. The last two times himself and Shane Duffy started together at centre-back were the 4-1 defeat in Wales and the 5-1 defeat in Denmark. Now, I'm not sure if that'll play into Stephen Kenny's thoughts at all. it's hard to see how Duffy, having played little or no football, with his confidence at an all-time low, can come in and just quickly turn that around. But he is very, very passionate about playing for Ireland, and maybe he can show enough in training to Stephen Kenny to suggest, you know what, an experienced duo of Clark and Duffy is better than throwing Darragh O'Shea in there. But I think Darragh O'Shea will get there. We went for the goalkeeper because Stephen Kenny said last week that if Caoimhín Kelleher didn't make it, Mark Travers is next in line. And I think Coleman at this stage is nailed on. It's incredible he hasn't played since that night he was sent off in Switzerland. He will be a man with a point to prove, I think, individually, but also collectively, because he takes that role as captain very seriously. I think he takes to heart the criticism of the team. He takes that as a reflection on himself, that he is the captain of this group that are being roundly slated again and again. So I'd expect a big performance from Coleman tomorrow night.
Listen, the more I look at that, the more I look at Coleman, O'Shea, Clark, Stevens, and the way you talk up Kieran Clark there, it doesn't remove the possibility at all of Ireland coming away with a clean sheet. Like, I mean, it does leave that hope. It isn't the worst back four in the world whatsoever. Like, the one question I would have, Steve-O, just on Shane Duffy, having watched a lot of Celtic this season, how different an experience is it for Shane Duffy playing in that back four, team going after titles in Scotland, to what it would be saying playing in the back four for a Stephen Kenny Ireland team?
Well, I suppose I would be kind of agreeing with Nathan there, and I do think that there's a good chance Kenny will go for Duffy, despite the fact that we might fancy Clark and O'Shea. But the problems with Celtic are run deep. You know, it's not just their defensive issues weren't just down to one bad defender. There was systematic failures there in that Celtic team, and I wouldn't be kind of pinning it all on Shane Duffy, although we do know he's had his own problems himself with form and that kind of thing. And perhaps, you know, Stephen Kenny's putting his arm around him, as we know he likes to do with some players, and, you know, perhaps just coaxing a really good performance out of Shane Duffy. I wouldn't say that's beyond the realms of possibility, and I wouldn't be exactly too downhearted if Duffy and Clark were picked to get together. But I just keep thinking back to Darragh O'Shea's performances against Liverpool and Manchester City in the Premier League this season, the two 1-1 draws away from home, and just how steady and assured and calm Darragh O'Shea looked. He didn't look like a guy who was just starting out his Premier League career. He looked, you know, an old head on young shoulders. And I think with somebody like Seamus Coleman and Kieran Clark beside him, and Enda Stevens has a fair bit of experience himself, that he should be okay in that back four. I also think, you know, Nathan was talking about Kieran Clark there, even just looking at his goals as well. Like, he's just approaching 200 Premier League appearances. I think he's 3 short. He's got 15 Premier League goals. It's a decent return for a centre half and a guy who has started, you know, so many of those 197 appearances. So that's something as well that we could be looking at for set pieces. And we know Shane Duffy is good for goal at set pieces as well. And as Nathan said, just having that experience of Seamus Coleman coming back, I just think it's so big. You know, there was that video going around the social media the other day of him meeting Gavin Bazunu in the team hotel, and just getting there, having a chat with him. And, you know, it's just so important, I think, having Seamus Coleman, not just in the team for his ability, which I think he's been back to his best form. I think it took him a while after he came back from that broken leg, but we've seen Seamus Coleman this season back to his best on the pitch. But I think as well, just his captaincy, his leadership that he has off the pitch is going to be really crucial as well. I think Seamus Coleman is first name on the team sheet, and then after that you can see where you go from there. But I would like to see O'Shea playing. I don't think this game is beyond him. And also, I think Dan McDonald made a good point to Joe last night as well about Mark Travers. We've seen him with Bournemouth getting thrown into a big Premier League game against Tottenham Hotspur, his debut, and he kept a clean sheet in that match as well. So if we can pull a performance like that out of him again tomorrow night, we'll be doing okay.
Yeah, and Stephen Kenny won't see Darragh O'Shea as a massive risk. He knows his game inside out. He had a great partnership with Conor Masterson at the 21s. He is, from everything you hear of Darragh O'Shea, a real leader. He's got an old head on young shoulders. So having Coleman alongside him, it will be just, if he looks at it and thinks, away in Belgrade, even at an empty stadium, do I want that bit of experience with Duffy? But I think he will more than likely go with O'Shea.
You've both gone for Matt Doherty then in the starting team as well. Is that because of the injuries, Nathan, or is Matt Doherty in Ireland's best 11 regardless?
I think Matt Doherty is one of Ireland's best 11 players. The difficulty is where do you fit him into the side? But I think away from home, it could work perfectly because Doherty is at his very best when he's making those late runs into the area at the back post. We know that he is a good passer of the ball. We know his close control is excellent when he's picking it up out in the wings. The criticism of Matt Doherty is when he's on the back foot. And regardless of changing system styles, any of that, Ireland are going to find themselves on the back foot at times in this game. So could you fully trust Matt Doherty at right back compared to Seamus Coleman? I don't think so. So that's why Coleman is one of the first names on the team sheet. I just think you have to give Doherty another opportunity. I was in Gibraltar, I think it was this day 2 years ago when Ireland played Gibraltar, and Coleman and Doherty played in ridiculously windy conditions, and it was written off. And it was one of the big mistakes Mick McCarthy made because it wasn't actually that bad, Doherty and Coleman. And I think he gives you a good attacking outlet while being able to double up defensively as well with Seamus Coleman. So I think it's a perfect game to play Matt Doherty on that right-hand side. If everyone is available, I'm not so sure, but I'm more than happy to have Matt Doherty playing in that team because, as I say, I think there's no question he's one of Ireland's best players. It's just where do you find a spot from?
I think as well there was a bit of concern about Doherty as well in regards to his defence. Well, I suppose his defensive frailties maybe exposed a little bit in that London derby a couple of weeks ago. He was skinned a couple of times by Kieran Tierney and Smith Rowe as well down that left-hand side. But I think as well has been shades of the old Matt Doherty just from an attacking sense with Tottenham linking up well with Gareth Bale, excuse me, down that right-hand side. And if you can get him, like he can come in diagonally through the box or also around by the byline, and he can really give defenders something to think about. So, I think you got to get him into that team somehow.
We just had Nathan's team up on screen. We might get that back up again so people at home can see it. So in front of that back four that we've mentioned, you've got Doherty on the right, but that's in front of a midfield three of Knight, Hendrick and Brown. So up front, you're going for Doherty, Robinson and Connolly. We'll come to your team in just a moment, Stephen, but I just want to get your opinion on Jeff Hendrick first, Nathan. Why is he a starter for you?
Because I think he hasn't done anything wrong since Stephen Kenny took over, and he is still a player of huge experience in a side that is lacking a little bit of experience, particularly in and around that midfield area. He comes in for an enormous amount of stick from Irish supporters, regardless, it feels, of how he plays, because that night against Slovakia, I thought he was excellent. There were other games during the Nations League when he played really well, yet you look online and he's getting absolutely hammered. He was put on a sort of pedestal after Euro 2016 by all of us that, let's be honest, he hasn't quite hit. But I think people put him on too high a pedestal for what they expected. His link-up play between midfield and attack, almost all the chances that Ireland created when he played came through Jeff Hendrick, and his ability to drive forward. Has obviously dropped out of the Newcastle team, got a half at the weekend. But because of the absences of Conor Howerton, I think if Howerton was there, maybe Hendrick may have ended up falling out of the side. But with Howerton gone, I think Hendrick will start. And he's any amount of options. It was very difficult to pick, particularly in midfield three. It's just from a Stephen Kenny point of view, when he does his press conference in an hour or two's time, when he's talking about his options, they're not the sort of good headache that managers often resort to with a cliche. It's not as though he's sitting there going, well, Callum Robinson has scored 10 Premier League goals and Aaron Connolly has scored 10 Premier League goals. Which of them am I going to pick? He's looking at it as which is the lesser of two evils of Callum Robinson hasn't played in 2 months and Aaron Connolly has come in with an injury. So there are lots of players there of similar caliber in similar situations at club level, and he's just trying to get the right mix. There's very few players who've come into this. Unfortunately, Conor Howerton was number one on that list, who've come in with their hand up saying, you have got to start me because of my club form. So I think Hendrick will play, and then I don't think you can play Knight and Malumbi together. Just that bit of an experience and probably both a little bit too rash at times. So I wouldn't be surprised if Cullen sits in that holding midfield role that James McCarthy played over in Slovakia. And again, whether it's Knight or Malumbi, or does he find a place in there for Alan Brown, I don't think it makes a huge difference.
Well, you've gone for Cullen over Hendrick, Steve-O, but I just want to mention one thing from your team because we're almost out of time. You've gone for Shane Long up front. I think we have your team as well here. Nathan, you've gone for Callum Robinson in that 9 role. So why Shane Long, Stephen?
Yeah, well, see, my reasoning was, I had Cullen and Knight plays the holding midfielders and Alan Brown just ahead of them. And I just think all of those players are playing for their clubs. They're all in form, so reward them for that. But I just think when you have a couple of players like that who are maybe lacking the amount of international experience that some of the other players on the pitch are, I thought that perhaps if you get somebody like Shane Long, who has a lot of international experience, and also we know what Shane Long is good at, like he's obviously good on counter-attacks, he's got good pace, but I think he's strong. He's able to hold the ball up well, and then he can bring in players like the likes of Aaron Connolly, Matt Doherty, Alan Brown, who are around. We know Alan Brown can get a goal or a shot away from the edge of the box. So that's why I went for long. And he's playing at Bournemouth again. Look, he's got a couple of goals and also hugely prolific, as it never really is with Shane Long over the last few weeks. But I just think for his ability to hold up the ball, which I think could be important when you've got a couple of nippy midfielders and strikers around, like the likes of Connolly, Knight, Brown and Matt Doherty as well.
Stephen, what's going to happen?
I don't think Serbia are, like, they've got some really good players. I'd be worried about the two Eintracht Frankfurt guys if they start. Kostic, Rebic, I think they're really good. Dusan Tadic, obviously from Ajax. They've got really good players in the attack. They're not really strong at the back though. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw.
Nathan?
The easiest prediction in world sport is when the Republic of Ireland are playing away from home, 1-1 is always the scoreline to go for, and I find it hard to disagree. I think Stephen Kenny touched on it. It's an 8-game group, which means if you can start fast, if Ireland could somehow come away with a win, Serbia are the wild card in this. We know Portugal, no likely are going to win the group. If you could win in Serbia, they're playing Portugal on Saturday. They've got Azerbaijan then next Wednesday. They've got games coming quick and fast. That actually a slow start for Serbia could be massively beneficial for Ireland. But I'm going to go for a 1-1.
So you're saying that we're actually going to score a goal, Nathan. Who's going to get it?
Callum Robinson. I've Callum Robinson in there because I'm putting a lot of stock in the Slovakia game, and I thought he was brilliant that night. I love watching him play. I can't believe with West Brom, the struggles they've gone through, he hasn't got more game time. Got a great attitude, and I'm going to go for a Callum Robinson goal.
Stephen?
I'm going to go for Aaron Connolly. I think he's got to answer some critics for what's gone on over the last couple of weeks. Maybe show his boss Graham Potter that he's still able to stick it in the back of the net.
Let's remember the most likely scenario is that Kieran Clark gets injured after 4 minutes. Shane Duffy comes on and scores with an 89th header.
You have heard it here first. The Republic of Ireland are going to draw a game 1-1. Breaking news. Nathan Murphy, Stephen Doyle, thanks a million.
Cheers on.
Thanks on.
It is 31 minutes past 9 on this Tuesday morning. You've been watching or listening to OTB AM. It's an association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Tomorrow morning on OTB AM, we're going to continue our build-up to Serbia versus the Republic of Ireland. We're going to have Matt Holland with us. We've also got Neil Treacy's Tide 5, looking ahead to that Pro 14 final, and much more besides. Right now, though, we're bringing you Keith Wood and Brian O'Driscoll on the Six Nations weekend.
In 4 minutes, right at the death, to snatch victory. A Welsh Grand Slam up in smoke. What it all means is this Friday, if France beats Scotland by 21 points or more, with the bonus point, obviously, then the championship is theirs. We have Brian O'Driscoll with us. Hi, Brian.
Hello, Joe.
And Keith Wood, evening.
Hi, Joe.
Ireland 32, England 18. Not just the result, Keith, which was very good, but a performance to match as well. Feels like a long time since we could come on here on a Monday and be, positive about an Irish performance. It was great.
Well, I think so. An awful long time, actually, since we've seen anything approaching that standard. And it was magic. It was magic to watch. I think it's why the game is so good. When you see a team turn up in that fashion, and there were changes, big changes than what we've seen over the last few weeks, and that makes it just a tiny little bit. I don't want to be frustrated with it, but I feel we could have seen some of those sooner. But I thought from a man to 23, we were fantastic. It was a joy to watch. The whole weekend was brilliant, but I think that set it up perfectly. That is as good as we've played since 2018.
Brian, I know you make a point of watching the games twice, 3 times, sometimes the week afterwards. When it comes to Ireland, that hasn't been so much fun of late, but those tries, I'd say, were good fun to watch back.
A whole lot was, Joe. I actually even really enjoyed the first 15, 20 minutes when Ireland weathered England's storm. 3 or 4 minutes into the game, I thought, we're in trouble here again. Just the physicality that they brought. They had some really good initial kicks from both Youngs and Ford. They squeezed pressure. Their defence looked big. They turned us over, pushed us to the sideline a couple of times, eked out penalties. I just thought, oh no, here we go again. How are we going to match this? And then for me, there were kind of in that 15-minute period, there were 3 pivotal moments that changed the course of the game. And we always talk about Six Nations and Test match rugby, fine margins and momentum. Well, for me, these were huge momentum moments in the game. The first one was Itoje being held up over the line where they went for the flat ball, almost a bullet in the head at one to the prop, but Toji catches it, and Tyburn jumps across. They pile over, and Billy Vunipola should have been able to secure the ball, and it should have been a try. Probably lucky that Tadhg Furlong didn't give away a penalty as well, but then we got a penalty from the ensuing scrum. There was moment number one. Moment number two was from Robbie Henshaw, where he stopped forward on a scrum, or was a driven line out, where he stopped forward from offloading to Watson, and he's gone. That's a try. That's going to be 8 or 10-0 and a different complexion on the game. And then the third moment was a minute later. Robbie Henshaw, for me, was head and shoulders above everyone else. Tadhg Furlong is in the conversation, but he was outstanding. But what he did in this sequence, and people should go back and have a look if they have the game recorded or watch on the player, his defence, his ability to read what's happening and react to it is like nobody else on our team. His defensive reading, but his tackling is equally good. So he tackles Johnny May, I think it was, and then realised that there's 5 backs stuck over in the 15-metre channel. And so he works to the far side of the pitch where England go again, makes a big impact on Ollie Lawrence, and then Conor Murray wins the shoulder on Vunipola, and we get a penalty for neck roll. And from that penalty, we go up and score Keith Earl's try. So that just shows you got to soak pressure, take it, and then counter punch. And that's exactly what we did. And then the momentum that we built on the back of that Earl's score was the building block for the rest of the performance.
I think everyone's raving about Henshaw, right from his brilliant solo try in Paris back in November, Keith, through to this entire championship. And maybe it's fitting that Brian's talking about that opening 20 minutes when Ireland were up against it a bit and not everything was going their way, as has been the case at times in this championship. Henshaw in particular has managed to thrive even under the gun a bit.
Yeah, and I was a little bit worried that we'd moved him out to 13, and I know that sounds kind of unusual. It isn't too far, but the other guy in this call will say how difficult 13 can be, but he'd been playing so well at 12. We've had times when we've played him out of position and it's taken him a while to settle in. It didn't take him any time. And that first 15, 20 minutes, he was truly phenomenal. He caused, every hit was at the perfect level. This will become part of the topic later on, that you have to hit high enough and not too high, and you have to hit with enough force and not too much force where you lose your control. I thought his control in that 15, 20 minutes was phenomenal. And that's just incredibly comforting to everybody around him. Yes, he did spot a couple of things very early. He made the right play very early. But he looked like he just did, like for 15, 20 minutes, he was phenomenal. But he continued that for the rest of the game. So, look, it was a very complete performance by him. I actually thought he was class. I thought so many players put their hands up for man of the match, because there was a huge amount of little things that happened during the game that you say, wow, that was amazing. That deserves more consideration and more talk. But then you had to move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But I felt that after I think after about 7 or 8 minutes, I think England looked a tiny bit panicked. They were being knocked back. They're not used to being knocked back. They were shocked to their feet. They're a little bit shell shocked. And then when Ireland got the chance and they go for that kick to touch, and you say, God, you'd like that kick to have been a bit closer to the try line. That's a bit too far out, But that was a perfect execution of play. Absolutely perfect.
It was interesting. So you're talking about the Earls try, obviously, on 22 minutes, which really, such an emphasis and change of momentum, Brian. Jack Conan was talking afterwards, and he said Tom Curry was the tail gunner in the line-out, but we'd planned for him not to be there because that's how England had set up during the campaign. So we thought it would be a free run, that I would come around, catch the ball and have time to square up and either take an inside or an outside option. Obviously, the picture changed, but to be fair to Earlsy, all I had to do was pop the ball down to him. He did all the hard work. What an incredible finish. So, plan move, and then, some good decisions and reactions in the midst of it too.
Yeah, it's really interesting, that different line-out plays become in vogue. And the same can be said for back plays as well at different times, and almost they're forgotten for 6, 7, 8 years, and then bang, someone produces it. I saw something on social media today of a Leinster try from Jamie Heaslip doing the exact same, where Easton Nassi was involved. I think I might have even been playing in that game myself against Biarritz. So it must be the guts of 10 years ago. So these plays, you know, if clever line-out operators like Paulie is and others around the world will manipulate defences, and all you can do is analyse with the expectation that a team is going to do a particular thing. It's about how you react when they do something different. And with regard to Jack Conan, I think he's absolutely playing down. All I did was pop it down. If you watch the actual skill of what he does while Tom Curry is hooking one of his hands, he manages to grasp with the two of them, but then ultimately just flick it with his left hand down into Keith Earl's breadbasket. That is a really, really difficult skill under pressure at full reach. So, you know, I think he should be lauded for what he did and his own performance. I probably, you know, I asked him questions about, you know, the toughness and the nastiness. We had it in spades. We had an all-encompassing performance. I thought he carried when he needed to. He hit rucks when he had to. He tackled efficiently. He obviously got his try. So, you know, with the departing CJ Stander, we were thinking, where is our go forward going to come from? Well, that just gave us a huge sense of relief that we have Jack Conan in that form that's capable of picking up where CJ leaves off.
And it was just a fill up on so many levels, Keith. Obviously, look, to get the first try of the game and all the energy that comes with that. But even I saw a stat that of Ireland's last 200 tries, 50% of them, 50% of them have come from off line-out play. You know, and it's been such a brilliant weapon down the years. And even of late, you know, and going back right through 2020 as well, these brilliant Joe Schmidt starter plays or set plays or power plays or whatever you want to call them, these little set moves, they had disappeared, and we thought, well, you know, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater here. So it was actually great to see one of those plays back, and you look to Mike Catt and you look to all the team and you say, okay, a bit of creativity, it's great.
Well, I think a lot of those tries come from mauling them over. You're on 5 metres out.
Sure.
This was, you know, and this wasn't a beautiful, it was an incredible throw from Herring. I mean, he is throwing really, really well. It's a very tight spiral. The ball is getting through the air really, really quickly. Under pressure, that pop down, it's directed down more than a pop down. And Earl's is kind of, you could see his eyes going left, a little half shift off his right, and then a big punch off his left leg. And people say he burned Johnny May. I thought Johnny May did unbelievably well to get back. Johnny May's so quick to get back to make the tackle. Earl's only just got over the line. Yeah. But it was an incredible finish. And it was exciting. And, you know, normally you have a crowd that goes ballistic when that happens. And but you could see the excitement from the players, from every one of the players that was in there. You could see Conan looking for Earls immediately afterwards, saying it was almost like, you owe me a pint now, kid, you know. And there's a bit of that which was great. And from then on, now even before then, for me the big change to it. So Brian talks about moments that have changed. For me, what had changed was that Conor Murray wasn't looking to see where his 10 was. And he wasn't always passing to 10 either. He was looking to pass, not dead flat, but relatively flat. He was never looking over his shoulder for where it was going. He was hitting whoever was the first receiver. And he wasn't looking to slow down the ball to kick it. Even when the Ger and Eoins were going up, it wasn't, let's put 3 guys into the ruck, slow it down. It was, everything was done at a higher level of pace. And we, you know, like England looked as if they were totally uncomfortable because the speed of everything was up a different gear. And so from that try, when that try went over, and of course Sexton is kicking like a dream at the moment, and that's the best I've seen him play in, I would say, 4 years, maybe 3-4 years, 2018 definitely. But his goal kicking then is just so easily certain that it's going over the bar. But from that moment on, Ireland were flying. We're not in control, because you can't be in control that early in a game, but they seemed to be incredibly confident, and England seemed to be sapped of confidence.
Which brings us to Jack Conan's try then, Brian, and you can give us your thoughts on this. There's a lot going on here. I mean, I think every player bar Ian Henderson touched the ball in those 3 minutes. It's interesting, you know, if the theme of the previous 4 games has been Ireland running into an English wall and not getting very far, For a while, I thought that was happening, and then I think Furlong might have made a break, and as only Furlong can, there's an offload to Stander, and they're moving again. It was 17 phases when Sexton kicked for Keenan to make that brilliant catch, and then on it went again. What jumped out to you?
Yeah, I think the great thing about it was it wasn't perfect, but it felt great because there was no panic. Even in the situations, their shape looked good the whole time. There was lots of late footwork at the line. They weren't lining themselves up. Maybe with the exception of CJ, who's the only guy that's capable of putting a hole through the middle of someone. You saw some huge collisions between him and Billy Vunipola over the course of the game. No wonder the guys decided enough is enough, the damage that he's taking. But I just felt as though the organisation and the decisions to hold the ball, the little pop in and out, the tip on or the tip in, in the case of the tip on, you have to be very careful as to not get taken out as the ball carrier. If you tip the ball on to the outside guy and you don't have a support runner on your inside, you're going to get turned over. So even the understanding of when they were in pods of 2, when they were in pods of 3, when to carry, when to pull the ball out the back, there was huge variety. But I think what I really enjoyed as well, they were playing around a little bit, but they were still going forward when Johnny decided to go to the kick contest. And it felt like the kick was used as a weapon rather than as a shield. Yeah. And I think that's the mentality. That is the difference of how you create something positive from going to the air rather than, oh my God, we've run out of ideas, let's go to the air. And then obviously, the manner in which he stuck it right on Elliot Daly, who was, had to do a counter movement jump versus, Hugo Keenan's line coming in, his elevation in and knee into Elliot Daly's backside was pure AFL. It was just textbook stuff. And then the quality of Bundyacki's pass to get it out to Conan, who shipped it on to Stander when Dave Ewells was putting massive pressure on him. I just thought all of it was excellent. There was no panic, but the execution and the quality of play across the board, even when it didn't go perfectly, they just, all right, next play, let's go again. And then Conan, the way he identified a Cowan-Dickey, wasn't sure as to whether he needed to go blindside or not and power over from 6 meters out. That still took a fair bit of finishing. So I just thought there was so much positivity in it because we showed an array of skills and a versatility to how we can actually play the game by playing tight, playing wide, offloading, footwork, going to the air. It had everything.
Yeah.
It's funny, Brian. I didn't like the kick. When the kick was going up, I said, no, don't kick it. We've numbers out there. We're okay. We can attack wide out there. But it required the kick to be perfect. And it then required the chase to be perfect. When you said not everything was perfect, those two parts happened to be perfect. Perfect kick, perfect chase, perfect leap, great ruck immediately. And then it went back to the rest of the play. But I just thought the reaction of pace, running onto things, very flat passing, square hips all day, actually. And look, it was an extraordinary score and a great reach, because they're the reaches that can just be a bobble, that the ball drops out of your hand just as you try to put it down, because there's always somebody going to come flying in, and it wasn't. It was perfect play.
I presume as well, Brian, must be a huge difference if you're a Sexton, and this applies as well to the disallowed try. The greatest try will never score, probably. When you're moving forward with your kick as opposed to on the back foot under pressure with your kick. I mean, that's why one of the reasons the kick is perfect for Keenan.
Yeah, it is, and that's the thing. Also it's the level of pressure coming against you, and the time you have to pull off your skill, or sometimes that extra half second just settles you, knowing that you can get absolute perfect contact from it, which is exactly what happened from Sexton on the try. But we saw him again later on, like I said, about with Earls, with that no try on penalty advantage. A really good kick and a phenomenal put down from him. Such a shame that was chalked off because of Cian Healy's knock on marginal things. But it just felt as though they were really enjoying themselves once they got into it and realised they had at least parity on the collision winning, and then they had the ascendancy. It just felt as though it came much easier. And there's no shock there. This is a collision-winning game that we play, and when you get the impetus, everything else becomes much, much easier. The speed of your ruck ball, the defence on the back foot, and we talk about it the whole time, but it does become really simplistic when you start winning that kind of corridor of power.
Yeah, I'm interested as well, Brian, just on, like we've been asking here for a while, let's get our wingers more involved. Well, the wingers were in often as first receivers. I know we've seen a little bit of that with James Lowe, but even Aki went into scrum half at one stage. You know, if everything seemed to be about making the ball go faster, whatever was happening, just move it on. If somebody isn't there, we're not waiting around for anybody. And what I really liked actually was at times the way the English defended the back of our line-out. They were double banking at the back. So the only option on is to throw to the front. But if that happened, almost certainly the winger became the first receiver and who passed then to 10 because we wanted width. We looked for width immediately. And that makes a huge difference.
Well, do you know what it does as well, Keith? It gives your best passer, puts them into second distributor. And we used to do it a bit, back 10 years ago, be it Rog or Johnny, where I'd sometimes go in as first receiver, get the ball out to them, and they obviously either had their wiper kick, an ability to put a long searching kick over the winger's head, or to play that wide pass out to your 15 or out to your blind winger working around the corner. So I think there's a lot of merit in that. It's probably the most I've seen Keith Earls coming in at first receiver, and Johnny sometimes needs to be told, get out there, because he likes dictating play. Whereas, if he's not in the perfect position, if you have to work hard to get outside him and you might be null and void, much better off getting in a first receiver, pushing him out. And I think they're learning a lot more about that under Stuart Lancaster at Leinster as well. If you watch them, how often they'll come in rather than run to the end of a back line as a Larmer or one of the outside backs. They'll plug themselves in and push the guys that are in there out further. It's an easier thing to do to actually have a relative involvement in the move. So yeah, I think there was so much good stuff with regard to that, and it just feels as though Johnny's talked over the course of the last few weeks about it's coming, we're going to click, and none of us believed it because we hadn't seen proof, to reinforce the thought process that this might actually be coming. And then finally you get one of those performances, you go, oh, okay, maybe it is there. Oh, well, we get the pennies dropped now. You weren't just trying to support your coaching ticket and telling them they were doing a great job because you're captain and that's your role. You genuinely believed it, and credit to them that they did believe, and then they were able to back it up.
What is the difference? Is it the pace? Is it winning the collision first?
Yeah, for me
is it just on that, or is it also, for me it seemed to be a bit of a mindset change, that it wasn't about short pops 9 to a forward. There was a couple of cases in the last few weeks where Johnny almost had his back to the 9. He wasn't ready for it. And because
Johnny's
there was an
been guilty
idea
of that in the past. He has, of thinking a phase ahead and a setup phase rather than always. If you're an option for every play, the defense is able to read, you're not interested, you're organizing something out the back. It means it's going to, the pod that's coming is going to hit that up. So if you're an option every single time, it's only a fraction of a second of concentration needs to be dropped, or an interest level through the back. And that's where those little tip-ons work. And that's where an offload is created, or that's where a little bit of footwork gets you in behind the defensive line, a meter or two, and then you strike on the next phase. So it really is the tiny margins, and they just managed to win more of them than they lost at the weekend.
And as a sort of guideline for what we'd look to do going forward, are we trying to say that we want to play at the highest level of pace possible and that everybody can be a receiver? Because that's what it looked like. And that is a big difference, from where we've been.
But can we ultimately compete physically with all of the teams in the world? No, we can't. We can do it sometimes when we're emotionally charged against England and we feel as though we have a point to prove, and CJ Stander's last game and all of these very emotive things. You can't back that up week on week. And in a World Cup, when you have to do that against France, against South Africa, against New Zealand, against England, against Argentina, we can't concurrently, or we can't kind of connectively do it against these different teams. So we have to find a way to actually play a brand that, yes, we can do that sometimes, but we also play fast and frenetic, a bit like Japan did in the World Cup. They used their skill set as best they possibly could. They came unstuck against South Africa because they just got beaten up. But we can take on these big teams. I just don't think we can do it time and time again. And that's why we've got to find a way to just think our way around them a little bit more. And I felt we did that by the variety, by not just charging in one-off runners anymore, not pods around the corner. It felt as though there was viable options. And once everyone is a viable option and you can pick 1, 2 or 3 options, your defenses start getting a little bit softer, you give inside shoulders or you read through, and that's when the opportunities arise. And that's where the heads-up football that they've been banging on about comes to fruition and serves its purpose.
So that's why suddenly the English wall of the last 4 games doesn't look like an impenetrable wall again.
Yeah, because Johnny's that viable option outside the pod each time, that he's not trying to organise the next phase. That stuff makes a huge difference. It really does. And then, on top of that, England are a front foot defensive team. They want to make big impacts and then they want to race off the line. If you just check them a little bit, get a yard in behind them, and they're unsure of where the offside line is, that just creates that element of doubt where they can't accelerate that first 4 or 5 paces off the line to scare you into doing something you don't want to do.
Keith, by the way, on the way this took us a bit by surprise, I didn't suspect talking to you last Monday after the Scottish game you saw this coming by any means. Took you by surprise?
Oh no, I knew absolutely by surprise.
Because you were pretty. I would have said down about the Scottish performance despite the win.
I was. I'll tell you, I was down by the fact that I felt we were being put under far too much pressure because Johnny was too deep. And that was the issue for me. He was back very deep. He was passing it. He was being ignored by the defensive line. He was never much of an option. Contrast that to Saturday when he took the ball into contact 3 or 4 times. He's not fast anymore, but you still have to be there for him and you still have to tackle him because he's looking to offload. So that becomes a threat. For me, Conor Murray didn't run with the ball at all the other day, but he defended like an absolute Trojan. But it was his flat passing an awful lot. Now, it was accurate passing. It was either to a pod that was running or flashing it out the back, but it wasn't back 7 yards. That's the difference. I felt Johnny was running onto everything. I felt whoever was the first receiver was. And actually, as it turns out, I think if you change up who the first receiver is, that takes a huge amount of pressure off Johnny so that he's not thinking for 80 minutes solid over what's going to happen in the next 3 or 4 phases. And I often wonder which is cause or effect in terms of this. Is the fact that you're trying to hit an awful lot of things much flatter, that speeds it up. I know winning the contact speeds it up as well, but I felt that the pressure we were able to put onto an English defensive line that was never fully back in line because everything was much quicker. So even when we would win certain contacts, we often slow down our rucks a little. The speed of the ruck, but the speed of the ball out of the ruck, be it by hand or by kick, was drastically different. There was no time. There was no time left for England to kind of go and do anything. Now, I felt England I think they were shell-shocked. I mentioned that at the start, but England played last week at a higher tempo entirely than they have since the World Cup semi-final. They were phenomenal last week, and they weren't. I don't think they got a chance to do it. I think if we had slowed the game down, we'd have been bullied off the park. And it's trying to figure out where's the cause or effect. So there's a couple of bits, one way or the other, but I still don't quite know what's the one thing that changed, or was it 10 things that changed?
It shows as well, Keith, that how much of a game collision sport is an emotional game, and it's an emotional state. And even the subconscious of England winning last week versus losing, if they had lost against France, they simply couldn't have. They would have come with the mentality that we cannot leave here without a victory. Now, they still would have been thinking that, but not to the same degree. And desperation is an incredible thing. Ireland have been trounced by England, beaten badly on the last 4 occasions, and playing scared is a really, really dangerous weapon for teams. And if you can get the emotional component right and marry that with the skill set and the collision winning, it's a force to be reckoned with, and it's very, very difficult to beat. And it's difficult to do that every single week, to get yourself to that emotional state again. But they managed to do it. It's easier to do against England because we love playing against England and we respect them as a team. But it's not easy to get yourself in that state against Scotland and against Italy and against Wales. It's just not. So, they have to find a different way over the course of the next couple of years to make sure that those standards are still able to be realised, even though the emotional state won't be the same as it was on Saturday.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I have to take a short break. We've mentioned Henshaw and Conan and Sexton and Murray a little bit, and I guess Earls. Who else caught your eye, Brian? Who else were the big performers? I know there were lots out there.
Yeah, Furlong, obviously. Henderson's been outstanding, I think, in this championship. CJ was excellent. Again, I talked about some of those collisions that he made. But do you know what? What's almost a shame, an extra shame around his retirement is that I feel that there's been a real evolution to his game in the last year. That we've seen offloading, we've seen passing, we've seen something that we didn't see for the first 4 years of his international career. And now it feels as though that next level, he's making a little bit more space for himself because people have to respect the fact that he is going to offload. He's going to do something different other than carry directly into them. So it feels as though we are losing a player that has enhanced their skill set, is getting progressively better as well. But I think everyone played well. I think Keenan was good at fullback. Even Jacob Stockdale, who people will say had a quiet game by his standards. I thought he did everything really well. He cleared out one or two really important rucks, passed well, low errors. Even the Ben Young's try, I wouldn't blame him for that. I think that he's got to go for that intercept, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So I was really pleased for him that he had a really solid performance and worthy of a call back in.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward.